You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 29. I know we've been gone for a few weeks, and damn, does it feel like forever. I thought it was a month before I had done another show. Just been 3 weeks, so I know we're coming at you on a Wednesday, a little later than usual. Didn't want to have the fireworks in the show last night, trying to let everybody enjoy the 4th of July. Hope y'all had an excellent, safe 4th of July. I think Father's Day passed too as well while I've been off the show for a little bit. So I hope all the holidays, all the celebrations were great for everyone. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're tapped in with us on episode 29 tonight. Got an absolutely loaded show, but as usual, nothing has changed at the NFL with AJL on all social platforms. Go ahead and use your phone camera, scan that QR code in the corner for every bit of content. Get at us on social media. Leave us a review on podcast platforms. Loaded show tonight. ESPN lays off some legends. I mean, absolute legends from the company. They're coming with 7,000 jobs off the top, and just a few have rippled out. Super Bowl 58 windows. What teams can we actually see in the Super Bowl this year? Y'all make sure to like the stream, share wherever you're at, and subscribe on YouTube as well. Top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And Saints former head coach Sean Payton is apparently addicted to winning another Super Bowl in Denver. And maybe I'm a Saints fan in my feelings, but I got something to say about that. Got a guest on the show tonight. Nobody knew. We've had him before. Absolute legend himself. Speaking of legends, he hosts Goat Talk podcast at GTB Marcus on all platforms. What's up, bro? Good to have you in.
It's a pleasure to be back on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I appreciate you coming back on, dude. Like I said, I've been gone for a minute, and I was like, I need someone to propel us back into the podcast world, the live streaming world on YouTube. Back Pocket, what's going on, man? Just popping in. Have a great show. Michael Darby, what's good, man? Good to see all the usual folks in the chat. Yes, long time no see. Before we get into the show, though, man, did you have a good 4th of July? You been doing okay lately? I've
been doing good. Yeah, I've been doing real good. Last night was very loud on this side of town. Very loud on this side of town. But yeah, man. Yeah, I've been doing good. Been hanging in there.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude. I feel you. My dog was one trazodone deep. I'm over here like eating some strawberry ice cream, just like waiting to get through the fireworks. And dude, last year, it's just a little short story before we get in the show. Bought my house almost 2 years ago. So last year, this time, I'd only had my house for 7 months. Dude, I come out, my freaking lawn's covered, my roof is covered, my driveway's covered, and all this fireworks debris. And literally that morning, I contemplated for probably about 5 solid minutes with my girlfriend, like, should we sell this damn house? Do we really want to be in this neighborhood? And like me being a real estate agent, it's just been like, it was kind of a lot to think about, but we ended up not doing it. No fireworks on the lawn this year. I was outside eating the ice cream, kind of supervising left and right. Like, okay, you're a couple houses down, so we're good. Speaking of real estate, the market's been crazy, guys. That's really why I've been gone the last couple weeks. But we're here to talk about football. We're not here to talk about houses because I damn sure do that enough. We are here to talk about Super Bowl 58 windows. What teams could we realistically see going to the Super Bowl this year? Kind of a quick hitter segment, like I said, Marcus. So it's going to be really half open, wide open, or closed shut. You saw the teams on the lineup. So we'll start in the NFC West. So we'll kind of just go back and forth here. Start with those Seahawks. How do you feel about their Super Bowl window coming into 2023?
It's closed. I don't really. I'm not buying in. I'm not buying into the Seahawks side, but I gotta be honest. I understand what Geno Smith did last season. It was an incredible season, but let's be honest here for a couple seconds. Yeah, the bar wasn't that high,
right?
For Geno Smith as it pertains to having a career season, the bar wasn't that high. When you take into consideration that the Seahawks have spent the last 2 seasons, 2nd round picks on running backs, you take into consideration they brought in Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, I understand who DK Metcalf is, I understand who Tyler Lockett is, but DK Metcalf's production is gonna take a hit this year. It is. Oh yeah. And defensively, as much as the talent, like, you can respect the talent, but all around, that's what we're talking about. This isn't just for me anyway. Super Bowl windows aren't just about what you're doing yourself. It's about what the guys around you are doing in your own division specifically. We're talking about a San Francisco 49ers team that is still the best team in the division. No matter who their quarterback is, still the best team in the division up and down the roster. And me personally, and maybe I'm the only person that thinks this way that's not a Rams fan, I do think we need to give the Rams some credit and recognize that one of the reasons why the Rams weren't in the hunt last season is because Matt Stafford missed games, Cooper Kupp missed games, Aaron Donald missed games. When your 3 best players are missing just about half the season individually, you're not going to be competing for a championship, competing for a playoff spot. So the Seahawks, I think, 100% benefited from the vacancy that the Rams left, specifically in the NFC West. The Seahawks, will they be a playoff team this year? I think so. Are they going to be competing for a championship? No, not this year.
He just came off the rip. He said it's closed. Like just pregnant pause there, and then I'm going to get into it. As much as I agree with you on it being closed, I'm going to go half open because we did just see Geno Smith come and win comeback player of the year. And you're right. There was no bar set for him. We know the type of coach that Pete Carroll is. I love the Jackson Smith and Jigba pick. I love the Devon Witherspoon pick. Really feels like a Pete Carroll pick there. Not a lot of people saw him going that high, but when we see Pete Carroll, pick these guys, especially having some contributions for the Legion of Boom, all the legends that have come through there. Some people like to give him, the benefit of the doubt, maybe taking a player that early on. I don't have an issue with the player itself. Of course, when he took Devon Witherspoon, just a little early for my liking in the draft. But the biggest reason I say half open is I feel like they have the offense to actually compete in today's NFL. The defense is very hit or miss, here 1 year or here 1 week or month and then gone the next. It's not, really that Pete Carroll defense that we've come to know and love, at least over the last, 4 or 5 years. I mean, we got so used to the Legion of Boom and now it's kind of fallen off. You have the things of, let's let Russ cook. Now Russ is out. Geno Smith is in. I like Geno Smith. I like Kenneth Walker. I love the JSN pick. He wasn't my best receiver in the draft, but he clearly is a good fit because he feels like a Tyler Lockett 2.0. Going to enjoy DK Metcalf, of course, Tyler Lockett as well. If the defense was all the way there, might be crazy for some people for me to say, but I would say that it would be wide open. But Geno's just coming off that 1 year. I'd like to see more out of the defense and maybe even a little more out of Pete Carroll as well. But on to the best team in the division, like you mentioned, San Francisco 49ers. How's that Super Bowl window looking?
Oh, it's wide open. I mean, when you look at what the 49ers have done over the past couple of seasons, we're talking about a team that has been to, what is it now, 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. They've been to a Super Bowl in that span as well. And this is, and I'm a Jimmy G fan, but this is with a non-top 10 fringe top 15 quarterback under center with Jimmy G. And then, of course, they had like the mixture of Jimmy G and Brock Purdy and all that stuff last season. But this is a football team that, whether it's a healthy Brock Purdy, whether it's a healthy Sam Darnold, maybe even whether it's a healthy Trey Lance, this is a team that is at best the second best team in the conference. We just saw this team last season lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's be 100% honest. If it weren't for like a freak accident play early in the game with Brock Purdy's elbow, and then again with the lack of awareness, one of very few instances of not being aware of Kyle Shanahan, of challenging what was clearly an incomplete pass to Devontae Smith on the sideline. We could be talking about the 49ers in the Super Bowl with a rematch with the Chiefs as opposed to the Eagles. So let's not forget who the 49ers are, top to bottom, when healthy, one of the best defenses in football, one of the best pass rushers. I think easily the best linebacker core. They've got the second best O-line behind the Eagles. Obviously, they have a phenomenal receiving core when you include, of course, George Kittle. And then, of course, they have arguably the best back, at worst, the second best back in football in Christian McCaffrey. Another season fully healthy in this system. You cannot ignore what the 49ers do. The only person that can stand in the way of the 49ers from winning a Super Bowl, at least getting it back to on this season, is whoever their quarterback is. That decision, whether it's Darnold, Purdy, or Lance, that decision is going to determine what exactly the ceiling is for the Niners. But their Super Bowl window, wide open.
Heard that. And the last reasons you just said there about the quarterback, it's going to depend on who the quarterback is. And then you name off the 3 quarterback names. That's the reason I'm going to say half open here. And I hear all your claims about it being wide open. We know one of the best offenses in the league when they're clicking, one of the best offensive schemes in the league when they're clicking. You can plug, it feels like, any running back into that system. I mean, we had Tevin Coleman at one point, Raheem Mostert. Those guys, I feel like, catch traction because of what they did with the Niners. You mentioned the receiving core. Great coach as well in Kyle Shanahan. We know what the Niners have done in recent memory, being in those NFC championships, but I only got to keep it half open because even if Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant last year and did go on to only lose in the NFC championship game to the eventual team that lost a Super Bowl shootout with the Kansas City Chiefs, you have nothing to complain about there. But we're also going to be talking about, is it Brock Purdy starting all 17 games this year? I would like to believe that Sam Darnold is not going to be in this mix at all. But for some reason, Sam Darnold still keeps getting damn jobs. So apparently he's doing enough in the quarterback room. And then Trey Lance is a complete question mark. I mean, literally on the possible verge of maybe being the biggest bust in NFL history. And I'm not trying to give a hot take, but when you look at what they gave up for him, how hyped he was, how he was supposed to be coming out of the draft, that's the big question mark. If Jimmy G probably had this starting job, even though he failed the physical with the Raiders, and I understand all that, and he had his injuries last year as well. But I feel like I might be willing to say it'd be wide open because I've seen Jimmy, even in a little bit of an unhealthy season, take them far, take them to a Super Bowl, be just one throw off. Gonna have to keep it halfway open there, but I like the
Sure.
take, man. We're starting off very polarized here. Now we're gonna get into my team, the New Orleans Saints. Wide open, half open, closed for a Super Bowl 58 appearance.
So this one's tough for me because I was on record last season is saying that a healthy Jameis Winston could have led this team to an NFC Championship game.
People were saying MVP for that, dude.
And I firmly believe that. When you look
Yeah.
at what this team is, I'm going to go half open. This is a playoff lock for sure. This is undeniably the worst, if not the second worst division in football. Both South divisions are going to be absolutely garbage this season, unfortunately. So the Saints are going to benefit from a couple things. I do think the Panthers are a threat because they have found a way to build a nice team around Bryce Young, all things considered.
They're going to be sneaky good this year.
Yeah, and if Bryce Young is as advertised, we could be talking about the Panthers making the playoffs, but we're talking about the Saints here. I'm going to say half open because when I look at that defense, I think that's a defense in New Orleans that gets no respect whatsoever, and it baffles me because you're talking about the last that back 3-4 years of the Drew Brees era. That was a top 5, top 10 defense yearly. Like
the
Demario
Saints
Davis,
got their best defense in recent memory when Drew Brees was headed out, and that really pained me to see as a fan because we saw the Triple Crown years and when he came in, second in the MVP voting 4 times, but he never had the defense to back him.
Yeah, no, the defense has been incredible. I'm a big Demario Davis fan. I don't think Cam Jordan gets enough respect for what he does up front. Right. Yeah. Here's my one concern. My one concern is health offensively.
Yep.
Right. I have no doubt that Chris Olave is going to have a phenomenal second year.
Okay.
I have no doubt. Like, I'm concerned about Michael Thomas and I'm concerned about Alvin Kamara. Those two guys both have been dealing with injuries and off the field things that has kept them off the field. We both know that when healthy, I'll say that Alvin Kamara is top 3, top 5 in the league. Right. And there was a point in time when we were looking at Alvin Kamara being the 1B to Christian McCaffrey's 1A because they both did the exact same thing. Christian McCaffrey's just he's a bit bigger, not as elusive, but just a bit bigger. And so that's why we gave the edge to Christian McCaffrey. This is a football team, though, that can absolutely make the playoffs. And I think if the match, no one wants to give Derek Carr his respect because of his tenure in Las Vegas, but let's not forget what we're talking. We're talking about the formerly known Oakland Raiders. This is one of the worst. That was one of the worst run franchises of the last decade and a half. You're putting him in a franchise that has been well run, that has a history. And while we do have some question marks about Dennis Allen's ability to be a head coach, on paper, this team should win at least 9 or 10 games. This team should win the division. And this team, I think, could surprise some people and make it to the Super Bowl. But I will say it's half open. There's a chance, but it's not. A lot of things got to go right, but there's definitely a chance.
Definitely. A lot of things got to go right. Maybe some injuries. Maybe, the NFC South is a lot weaker than we like you said, we already know it's going to be the worst or the second worst or one of the worst divisions in the NFL, but how bad is it actually going to play out? Are we going to be able to get some games to go our way? Maybe some calls, whatever the case is, right? I'm going to say half open as well, though. Derek Carr coming into a new system. I'm not a Dennis Allen fan. I think we're about 8 or 9 games in last year. Michael Darby, you know this for a fact. I literally changed my fantasy name to Fire Dennis Allen because I was sick of him. I was sick of the horrible coaching. The offense was cold. It didn't look like we had just had Sean Payton and Drew Brees for 17 years. It didn't. Or it might not have been 17, but however long, so it was very difficult to see that. There are some question marks about the defensive line. Love that you gave credit to the defense, and it's been nice to see that Saints defense come around, like I've mentioned. I want to see more of that on that defensive line. I know we got Brian Bresee. I know we got Isaiah Foskey, and we're waiting for, more things to unfold preseason, see how they're actually performing in the regular season. Got respect for my linebacking core, really got respect for the secondary as well. To know that the Saints were a top 5 defense in total yards and were a good defense in passing last year, knowing that Marshawn Lattimore missed most of the season is absolutely impeccable, So I feel like I could even venture to say, and maybe this is a little bit of bias creeping in here, if Sean Payton was still the coach, I might venture to say that it's wide open. And I want to believe that it's still wide open because we just came off of the 4-year stretch, NFL record for wins, but no Super Bowl appearances. That's a dagger in the heart. I hate to say that every time, but that's what we witnessed with the Saints team. The biggest question mark is really health. Like you said, what's Michael Thomas going to be? I'm not a fan that we brought him back. What's Michael Thomas going to be? How much of this season is Kamara actually going to see? Because we make a big move at running back for Javonte Williams, Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams. But yeah, and then question marks about Dennis Allen. So there's going to be a couple things here that do have to go the Saints' way, but I am going to stick with you and say half open there. Now going on to the NFC North, the Lions, who are getting a ton of hype, didn't even mention it. We're just a little over 2 months away from the NFL season. Yep. Thursday, September 7th, 8:20 Eastern Time, Lions at Chiefs to open it up. Lions are getting a lot of respect out of Super Bowl for the city of Detroit.
I'm going to say right now it's closed. And the reason I'm going to say it's closed right now is because as box office as this offense is, they did just.
It's really impressive how they built this roster in a couple years. I will say
they did just field one of the worst defenses in the history of football last season. And so that is when you're in a conference where you have to go through the Philadelphia Eagles, when you got to go through the Niners, when you got to go through the Cowboys, when you got to go through even like a team like the Vikings.
Yes,
having one of the worst defenses ever. Not going to cut it as it pertains to winning a championship. But what I will say also is there is a chance that we can see the Lions make a run at it. This is a very sneaky team. It's a very gritty team. And it's a team that I think gets slept on a lot. Like, I know they're getting overrated, but I also think there's still a very large population of the NFL community that there's so many of people that think that the Lions are so overrated that they don't want to give the Lions their credit. Yep. And let's be 100% honest. This is a football team that right now should be, and I think they are last time I checked, they should be the odds-on favorites to win this division. The Packers, my Packers, we don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. The Bears, I know they made moves, but they're still not there yet. They still have a lot of holes and a lot of
7 wins would be a huge W for them this year.
And as much as we want to give respect to the Vikings because they've kind of always been the second best team in the division behind the Packers, the Vikings have lost some pieces, and their defense is also extremely bad. The difference is it's just not as bad as the Lions' defense. The Lions should be favored to win this division. They should be favored to make it to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game if the wild card matchup is favorable. But they're not competing for a championship just yet. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is not prime Jared Goff with the Rams.
Right.
And I know that Jared Goff didn't play that great in the Super Bowl that they went to a couple years ago against the Patriots. But if this was that Jared Goff, I'd be confident enough to say that maybe it's half open. But this defense isn't that good, and Jared Goff has been doing just enough to keep them competitive. He hasn't been doing enough to make me think that they're going to be competing for a championship. So it's closed right now. But if they find a quarterback, whether it's via trade or via the draft, in the next 2, 3, maybe even 5 years, we could be talking about the Lions literally competing for a championship, which I don't think is something we've ever done. At least not since Barry Sanders was on the roster.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. This is a tough one between half open and closed because, you look at the offense of Jared Goff and you even talk about how he didn't play well in the Super Bowl and kind of the expectations that were on him first year in Detroit. And I feel like his numbers in Detroit have actually been pretty good, if not kind of comparable to what Jared Goff was asked to do with the Rams. He had a couple of those moments where he could be, one of the top quarterbacks in the league or make a big throw, but I don't feel like that was really Jared Goff's MO when he's inside of an offense. And we saw like he goes to the Super Bowl. This was kind of funny. He goes to the Super Bowl and maybe at that time in football, the hardest division, I think Kyler Murray was just about to be a rookie or maybe he was a rookie yet. I'm not sure. Toughest division in football. Sean McVay is your head coach. You get to a Super Bowl and play the tightest Super Bowl in NFL history against the greatest coach of all time and you lose your job. So like Jared Goff is a good, not great. I'm not going to put him in that conversation, but he is a good, respectable quarterback. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, how they pick him up. Jamison Williams is suspended, unfortunately. You do have Marvin Jones Jr. You would like to see TJ Hawkinson still in that Lions uniform, but of course he is with the division rival of the Vikings. And then when you go over to that defensive side of the ball, and this is why I didn't really care for the Lions draft overall, and I understood the perspective. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell. I'm trying to remember a couple of the other picks. Oh, they also go and get, I think, they picked up Brian Branch, correct?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, they did pick up Brian Branch. So, kind of their perspective is, hey, we could get maybe the best player at each position, if not the second best player within our first 3 picks. But when you look at how the defense was bad, when you look at even though they take Aiden Hutchinson last year, who was maybe the best player in the draft, one of the best defensive linemen, they still can't stop the run. They do bring in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Of course, they do bring in Cameron Sutton. I'm still going to go half open because I feel like they made enough moves in the offseason, even though they weren't favorable to their situation. Jahmyr Gibbs is still going to ball out. I think Jack Campbell's
Sure.
still going to be good. Brian Branch was still by far the best safety in the draft,
Sure.
And then I want to say that they also brought in, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know. No, they did bring in Sam Laporta. There you go. I was just looking at the depth chart, making sure I had, some of the draft players right. Dan Campbell also as a coach, I feel like he's still starting to get his respect in the league. Like the way the Lions have remade this depth chart over the last couple seasons and just realistically how I think they've done better than most people expected after Matthew Stafford got out of there. I've got that respect to make it half open for them. I do believe that this offense could not hang with the best in the league, but if they got into a shootout, maybe they'd win, I don't know, 4 out of 10 games, 5 out of 10 games. I don't really know that spectrum that they're on in terms of how well can they actually hang with these NFL offenses, but I'll leave it there at half open. Now let's go over to the Vikings.
Oh God. Like, what do you say about that? Like, we watched this Vikings team play with fire all season long last season. I think they had the most single possession games played in the history of football. I think. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but I think they did in a single season.
Wow.
And what happened?
No, I believe that.
And how they lose? How they lose to the Giants in a close game?
Yep.
Right. I'm gonna say it's closed. It's closed because I don't trust the defense, and it's closed because how many teams in this conference can you win close games with?
Yeah.
As you're going to the Super Bowl, you're like, you do not want to. You first of all, you're not even going to be in a close game with the Eagles. The Eagles showed us that in prime time earlier in the season last season, so that's not happening.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in a close game with the Cowboys. Each of the last 2 times you've played the Cowboys, you've lost by double digits.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a good look for you. You're not going to be in a close game against the Niners. The Seahawks might blow you out, but maybe you'll be in a close game. Like, it's very tough. If the goal of the Vikings is to play with fire this way, they're not going to win a championship. I will commend them, though, for going out there and getting, Jordan Addison to replace Adam Thielen. I will commend them for that. You've got another young receiver to play alongside Justin Jefferson. Obviously, as you mentioned, they did trade for TJ Hawkinson.
Duo in the league.
I think so. And those 3, I think that wide receiver tight end combination of Addison, Jefferson, and Hawkinson could be one of the best in the league by the end of the season.
Right.
I do think that. Unfortunately, here's the deal. Dalvin Cook's not there anymore. And this is no disrespect to Alexander Madison, because Alexander Madison is phenomenal. And I've had Alexander Madison on fantasy teams. And when Dalvin Cook goes down, he still produces for you.
You pick that boy up and you have faith in him.
Yeah. But Alexander Madison does not strike fear in the defenses the way that Dalvin Cook has and still does.
Right.
This is going to be a pass-happy team to me. And I just don't know. If we're talking about the Vikings team of last year that's competing in 12 or 13 close games over the course of the season, mind you.
Right.
There's only 17 seasons to play. Yeah.
That's what people seem to forget.
There's only 17 games to play. So if 13 out of 17 of the games you're playing are one possession games, granted they won like 11 or 12 of them, good for them, but that's not a recipe for success in the long term. I'm going to say it's closed. I think they got to do something with that defense, primarily is the issue for me. There's a lot of explosive offenses that would have a field day with that defense, and they haven't really done anything to make that defense better.
Closed for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go half open again. I would say maybe wide open if I had more faith in Kirk Cousins, because we know where Kirk Cousins is. Like he can maybe win you a playoff game or two. We saw him do it against the Saints. We've seen them, have some comeback wins, have these close wins. But Kirk Cousins, and I don't think anybody believes he's really that guy that's going to take you to the promised land, that's actually going to be able to play in a tight game in a Super Bowl. He's smart. He's very intelligent. He makes, safe plays, very, very good plays, but he's not going to be in that elite quarterback conversation. He's always going to float around that maybe 10th to 12th or 13th best quarterback, at worst in the NFL. And we love the offense, right? I know you talk about Dalvin Cook, and I actually got a perspective from a Vikings fan, and it really just showed kind of how the running back market is getting devalued, which that's no surprise, right? So you have Dalvin Cook, who strikes the fear in teams, right? He definitely, puts that fear in other defenses. But I want to say, if I remember correctly, Dalvin Cook before last season had never played more than 14 games in a year, and at his rookie year delayed, I want to say, by an injury as well. So when you look at how he had the fat $16 million contract in the league over those 5 years, way too much for a running back. Thank you, Ezekiel Elliott, for making it to where a running back can never make over $20 million a year again. You look at what Alexander Mattison, when he's had to plug in those 3 games, 4 games, maybe in some part of a game where Dalvin's gassed or he is just hurt. With them being so pass happy, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the league, and also TJ Hawkinson, one of the top tight ends in the league, or at least one of the better tight ends in the league. When you look at how that offense is going to be able to operate, I'm now getting to the point in the NFL where I love defense. I don't know if I'm a defense wins championships guy or if I ever was, but you can win Super Bowls with the 20th or the 22nd, 23rd best defense in the NFL. It's kind of always been a thing, but especially in today's NFL. And you go and you look at the depth chart. Marcus Davenport from the Saints. They do try to get some more out of Andrew Booth Jr. They do have Harrison Smith at the safety position, Daniil Hunter, Harrison Phillips. So there are, I feel like, enough guys on that defense to be able to do what they need to. I know it's not a major change, and some people might think it's crazy that I'm saying half open, but this offense is too good in today's NFL for me to say that it's actually closed shut. Now we're flipping. Oh, actually, no, we're not. We still got a couple more teams here. Sorry, I was scrolled down too much. On to the NFC East. We'll take a little break after this, and then we'll get back into the AFC, starting with the Super Bowl runner-up, Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl window.
That's got to be wide open. I mean, they were just in the Super Bowl last season,
100%.
and they made moves this offseason to further extend the Super Bowl window. When you go out there and you trade away Miles, or you let Miles Sanders walk out the front door, like, wow, that's crazy. Oh, wait, let's go trade for DeAndre Swift. Makes perfect sense. They're about the same type of running back, except DeAndre Swift is younger. Makes perfect sense. You go out there and you're drafting you're drafting so many of these Georgia Bulldogs from that championship defense, and guess who you already have on that roster? Georgia Bulldogs from that championship defense. So there's a level of familiarity there with the guys you already have, with some of the guys that you're bringing in. Who they bring in? They brought in Jalen Carter, and I believe they also brought in Nolan Smith as well.
And
that's
Keely
amazing.
Ringo.
Keely Ringo, when you already have who on the roster? Nakobe Dean. So you are building a defense that from top to bottom is elite. Defensive line, elite. Linebacker core, elite. Secondary, elite. Then you get to the offense. Offensive line is elite. Jalen Hurts, I know we'll talk about him later because we'll both be in our top 10, of course, when we get to that point in the show. Elite quarterback already, right? You're looking at Dallas Goedert, who I don't think gets enough respect out of the tight end position because he's not as flashy as a Travis Kelce, or he's not as flashy as a George Kittle, or
People
he's not
forget he plugged in really well when Zach Ertz wasn't super healthy.
Absolutely
those
did.
Days.
But so once you get past the Mark Andrews and the Darren Wallers and the George Kittles and the Travis Kelces of the world, there's no reason why Dallas Goedert can't slot in that 5th spot as the 5th best tight end in football. And if you want to be completely honest, and I want to give a lot of respect to Darren Waller. Darren Waller has had a lot of injury issues. And for that reason only, you could make a legit argument that Dallas Goedert is the 4th because he's more available than Darren Waller is. Not maybe as dynamic and as crisp as Darren Waller, but from an availability standpoint, he's more available. I could put him at 4th. Then you have your 2 guys outside. You've got A.J. Brown and you have Devontae Smith. This is a team from top to bottom on offense and defense is probably the most they are the most complete team in football. And the only reason why they're more complete than the 49ers is because the 49ers have a quarterback issue. If the 49ers had like a top 15, like if they still had, like you said earlier, they still had Jimmy G, the 49ers most complete team in football. But they're not, unfortunately. It's the Eagles. And when you're just coming off a Super Bowl season when there were questions about whether or not Jalen Hurts could do it, when there were questions about whether or not Nick Sirianni could do it, they are doing it.
I get it.
Look at the division. And I know we're going to talk about the Cowboys in just a second. Look at the division. Other than the Dallas Cowboys, who has a legit claim to say they could knock off the Eagles? And no one even wants to give the Cowboys their respect, but I'll shoot the Cowboys some bail and I'll say we've yet to see Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott go one-on-one yet. This iteration of these players with this iteration of these teams. Hopefully we'll see that both times next season. We would have a better understanding, but 100%. There's only one team in the NFL that has a more open championship window than the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about them later, of course, but the Eagles, wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. Right there with you, man. Wide open as well. Jalen Hurts coming in, silencing all the haters. I knew Hurts was him. I knew he had it in him as well to be able to do what he did. Great draft. They do go, I think, from the easiest to now the hardest schedule in the
They
NFL.
do.
We saw how those schedules flip for them. They do have a new offensive coordinator. They do have a new defensive coordinator. So that is going to be interesting. But I can't have a team that just had a shootout with maybe one, not maybe, with one of the GOAT coaches in the history of the league, with a top 7 quarterback already in Patrick Mahomes in NFL history, with that offense, Bieniemy still being there, losing 38-35, and in my opinion, outplaying Mahomes. I know Hurts lost. Can't say that it's anything but wide open for them. Last team in the NFC before we take a small break, come back to the AFC. We damn boys, Dallas Cowboys.
I I hope this doesn't prevent me from coming back on the show, but I just hear me out. Hear me out. I've listed 2 teams as wide open so far in the NFC. The Niners and the Eagles.
Yep.
What are the things we talked about? We talked about how elite the defense is.
Yep.
We talked about how prolific the offense is.
Yep.
And for both of these teams, not so much for the Eagles, but especially for the 49ers, we talked about how much we trust the coaching, right? Of the 3, the Cowboys have the worst coach at this point. Mike McCarthy is not better than Nick Sirianni, unfortunately. Is the Cowboys defense the caliber of in the same tier of eliteness as the 49ers and the Eagles? I would say so. I think their secondary is not as great as the Eagles secondary. The Eagles secondary is the best secondary in football. But that D line anchored by Micah Parsons, phenomenal. And I don't think Trayvon Diggs gets enough credit for how he's been able to turn his life around. And coming from me, that means a lot because I was hard on Trayvon Diggs a couple years ago when he led the league in interceptions because of how many yards. He also led the league in yards allowed that season. And I wasn't having it. Check the tape. I was not having it. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys, though, and I know people like to harp on the fact that, they haven't, been to an NFC championship game in a quarter of a century and all this other stuff. Let's forget the past and let's just look at the Dallas Cowboys objectively in the here and now. If this was any other team with the roster they put out on the field, win healthy on a week-to-week basis, we would look at this team and say, man, this team has a wide open championship window. They have a guy that's in the top 10 under center. They have guys outside that can make plays. They have defensive playmakers. They have guys in the backfield that can get the job done. Their issue has been the coaching. Their issue has been the ownership. Their issue has been they have so easily fit the stereotype of, well, the Cowboys are going to cowboy it up just when you think they're going to get over the hump. But let's strip all that away. Let's strip away the glitz, the glam. Let's strip away Jerry Jones. Let's take away the stars on the helmet and just look at this football team. This football team is a championship caliber football team. And if you're asking me objectively, if this Dallas Cowboys, not the Dallas Cowboys America's team, but if the 2023-24 Dallas Cowboys, if this football team is a championship caliber football team and where their championship window lies, I would say it's wide open. And I would say unequivocally, they're the 3rd best team in the conference. And I would say unequivocally, they're the biggest threat to the Eagles, not just because they're in their own division, and they're also the biggest threat to the 49ers. The Dallas Cowboys championship window, to me, is wide open. And I know that might be a crazy thing to say for some of the people watching because, again, we want to talk about how they haven't won a game and, they haven't made it to the championship in a quarter of a century, all this other stuff. But let's strip all that away. Look at the football team objectively. Let's not talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's just look at the names on the roster and what it takes to win a championship. The Cowboys have it. I'm going to say it's wide open.
Feel you there, man. Very good explanation on why they're wide open. I'm still going to stick to half open, and I know you make the claims of let's not hold them to their demons of the past, and let's not think about Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy and maybe how Dak hasn't, performed the best in certain big moments. But that's what makes the Dallas Cowboys. That's what makes them cowboy it up. That's what makes them that's what makes me only want to have the window half open. Dak, I heard what you said about being top 10. Going to spoil it a little bit for the end. Not in my top 10, just outside of it. But it doesn't seem like a lot of people in the league are very far off about where Dak is, unless they're a Cowboys fan, clearly. But when you look at how Dak Prescott has a lot of garbage time with his yards and sometimes it's touchdowns, or how he doesn't make the best decisions, he's a hell of an athlete. He's a good player. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't believe he has that X factor in him or really it in him to take over a game, to actually lead his team, to overcome instability. And we understand that's a lot to ask because unless you're maybe really just Patrick Mahomes and we want to kind of give it, that benefit to maybe Joe Burrow or Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or maybe even Jalen Hurts, it's hard to overcome instability. And when you look at the fact that Dallas has just been through so much in the last few years. I mean, with the things with Zeke Elliott, wondering about Tony Pollard, Dak goes down with the ankle injury, then they have to pay him when he has no playoff wins, no Super Bowl appearances, no MVPs. Sure. Dak Prescott won that. The defense is great. Love the secondary that they have. Got a lot of respect for Micah Parsons. We understand what the offensive line can do. But if we're really talking about Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott going deep in the playoffs and getting to the Super Bowl to represent the NFC, that's just not a realistic thing for me. They have the roster for it.
Sure.
Maybe they have the culture for it. It's been 25 years. And I don't even like to say, oh, it's been forever. I'm not going to use that as a reason to keep it half open, but the way that they have performed, even just in the Dak Prescott era, some people say maybe his rookie year was a fluke. I'm not shitting on Dak. He's still a good quarterback, like I said, but I am going to have to keep it half open here for the Dallas Cowboys. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 29 of the NFL with AJL. We were gone there for a few weeks. Real estate business has been crazy, and had to make the things happen for the clients on the other side. Got GTP Marcus with me tonight on episode 29. Please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you're at. Follow us on all social media platforms, especially subscribing on YouTube. The QR code right there on the screen. You scan that, it'll give you every bit of content at the NFL with AJL. Get at us on social, and please leave us a review on podcast platforms and the whole spiel there for the NFL with AJL. Make sure you do the same thing for at GTP Marcus. That's here with me on the show tonight. Goat Talk Podcast with Marcus, brought to you by Give Us a Shot Network. Some of the cleanest work out there, some of the cleanest shows. Love how loose the guys are over there. I was just there last week. If y'all didn't see, I was on the show there last week with a few of the dudes. And as always, speaking of real estate, we are sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, at Buy and Sell with AJL on all social platforms. You can drop your email to get on their exclusive monthly real estate newsletter that gives you the truth about the market. The market's not going to crash. Yes, transactions are lower than 2008, but home prices are higher than ever, and there's never been more demand. But let me not spoil it too much. Go ahead and get on that newsletter. And if you want to take advantage of some of the AI that they just put in their business, you can drop a property address and your email and get some nice nuggets that a seller would want to know about their home, or even if you're just curious about certain property values. At Buy and Sell with AJL on all social media platforms. Now let's go ahead and jump back into AFC Super Bowl windows. I was kind of funny for saying, hey, this should be a quick hitter segment because we should know, talking about the big games, loving the NFL as much as we do. Who gives a damn how long it goes on for? Let's go ahead and jump into the AFC West. Talked about Sean Payton just a little bit earlier when we teased the topics. We're still going to talk about him later as well. Denver Broncos Super Bowl 58 window.
Oh my God, it's closed. It's so close. I don't know if there's a thing less than closed, but it's closed. And here's why. First of all,
starting off the AFC with a bang.
I got on Justin's show last year.
This Justin?
The hashtag This Justin Sports Show. Phenomenal show. Go check it out. The day after it was announced, maybe it was the day of, I can't remember. I think it was the day after it was announced that Russell Wilson was heading to Denver. And I looked in this camera here with a straight face and told everybody that will listen that the Denver Broncos were not going to make the playoffs.
I was right there with you.
Wouldn't you know, the Denver Broncos did not make the playoffs last season. And I explained that, and people go, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Look, when you are bringing in a new head coach and you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator and you're bringing in all this new stuff, that
selling the team
matters, bro. Like all that turnover, you're changing it all. Oh, it didn't matter because you still got Pat Surtain. And look, no disrespect to those guys, but it mattered. Mm-hmm. Now, what have they done? They're bringing in a new head coach. They're bringing in an entire new coaching staff. And while Sean Payton has a much better pedigree than Nathaniel Hackett does, and while I would hope for the sake of Denver, I would hope for the sake of Sean Payton, I would hope especially for the sake of Russell Wilson that they win more games and are competitive. Right. I can't sit here and tell you with a straight face confidently that I even think their Super Bowl window is half open. Yep. I can't do it to you. And here's why. They're not better than the Chiefs.
Right.
They're not better than the Bills.
Right.
They're not better than the Bengals.
Right.
I don't think they'll be better than a Ravens with a healthy Lamar Jackson. You can argue whether or not they'll be better than the Dolphins or the Jets, and I know we'll talk about them later. I don't think they're better than the Jaguars. The Denver Broncos.
Damn.
Will they be a playoff team?
I
The
can't
Denver
push
Broncos,
back though with how things have been
I
recently.
mean,
You know,
look, like
maybe I'd push back on the Jets and Dolphins, but I get your
sure.
claims. You know,
And if you want to push back on the Jets and Dolphins, I understand, because the Jets, it's a bunch of things happening. We don't know what it looks like on the field. The on the field product's not there yet. If you don't want to push back on the Jets, I'll give you that. If you don't push back on the Dolphins, I'll give you that too. But what I would rebuttal and say is, when Tua was healthy and his brain wasn't scrambled eggs, not only was he an MVP candidate, but the Dolphins were one of the best teams in football, and they were undefeated.
One of the hottest offenses.
One of the hottest offenses in football. I think when you look at what was happening with him when he was healthy before the first concussion, and then especially before the second one, in every major statistical category, that was one of, if not the best passing offense in football. And rightfully so, because disgusting. You have Tyreek Hill and you have Jalen Wilder, you've got Tua Tagovailoa. Understandably so. When I look at the Denver Broncos, what I'm saying is there's a lot of pressure on this football team. There's a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson, not just because he threw a stinker last season, but now he's bringing in a first ballot Hall of Fame head coach in Sean Payton to help him clean up his mess. And as you mentioned at the top of the show for the teaser, he's addicted to winning a Super Bowl. That doesn't even take into consideration the fact that the kings of the mountain reside in your division. In the AFC West, which means in order for you to win a championship, guess who you have to beat? You got to beat Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and Travis Kelce. How many teams in the
and they never played a road playoff game?
How many? They haven't been on the road. So what you're telling me is in 5 years, they're not coming to Arrowhead. They're not coming to Mile High. You're going to Arrowhead.
You're going to Arrowhead.
Here's a crazy stat for you: Pat Mahomes, undefeated on the road in the AFC West. He's never lost in Denver. He's never lost in LA. He's never lost in Oakland/Vegas. So even if it's a playoff game in Denver, well, history would tell you that if Pat Mahomes is coming to town and you're an AFC West team, you're going to lose that game.
Right.
I understand the talent. I recognize the talent. Don't get me wrong. I recognize who they have on the roster. I understand what they did to beef up that O-line. And I thought what they did bringing in McGlinchey and the other guy that they brought in, who I can't think of at the top of my head right now. Yes. Amazing. Makes perfect sense. There's too many eyes on this football team, and there's too much pressure. What's the one thing and I'll wrap up. What's the one thing everybody said about the move to Russell Wilson? Well, the Denver Broncos haven't had competent football play at the quarterback position since Peyton Manning retired.
Yep.
Russell Wilson's going to deliver that. Well, it's been 1 year of Russell Wilson, and he hasn't looked any better than Drew Lock or any of the other guys that they've had under center in Denver since Peyton Manning has left. He might have looked worse, which is absolutely unfortunate. Yep. So what I'm saying to you is I'm not doubting the talent, and I'm not doubting the ability. But when I look at the Denver Broncos, what they brought on the field last season, and specifically who they have to go through in a very stacked AFC. Forget the AFC. In the AFC West, like they're not winning the division, and I don't know if they're going to be able to go. They're not going to be able to go into Arrowhead and win a football game. There's only two teams that have gone into Arrowhead in the playoffs and won. The Patriots back in 2018, Tom Brady was the quarterback, and the Cincinnati Bengals again with Joe Burrow a couple years ago. Those are the only two teams that have gone to Arrowhead and won a playoff game. Last time I checked, Tom Brady doesn't play for the Broncos, and neither does Joe Burrow. I think the Broncos Super Bowl window is closed right now. As the season progresses, could they play themselves into the conversation? 100%. I'm not saying they can't play themselves into the conversation, but if you're asking me today, July 5th at 8:31 Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to say it's closed. And I have no problem with it. I'll die on the hill.
Yeah, no, that's totally okay. I was one of the few people that was right there with you last year too. I mean, new head coach, new quarterback. And this was my biggest thing. I said, first of all, those are two very pivotal, positions to change. But when you sell a team for the most ever, and who you sell them to, like business moguls, the heirs of Walmart. Like if y'all didn't know, the people who created Walmart, their son bought the Broncos. Just kind of a short story there for everyone. So they were going through a lot, right? So no, I'm right there with you, and I hated to see that happen for Russell Wilson. Like I didn't even want to watch the Broncos last year to see how Russell Wilson was doing because he had put the bad taste in everyone's mouth off the rip. I mean, it kind of set the tone losing to Seattle, and you can't even call the timeout. And then Geno Smith drops the whole, I wrote me off. They didn't write back. I think Nathaniel Hackett didn't call the timeout correctly in that game because the next game you have the whole damn crowd counting down the play clock for you to make sure that you manage it. I hear you want it being closed, absolutely, even if Russell Wilson return to 80% of what he was before he got like this? How is the bad season really going to affect that version of Russell Wilson that we have coming forward? And maybe there is a little bit of Sean Payton bias thrown into this, but knowing what Sean Payton did with the Saints, I feel like walking into a lot less. Now he's walking into this with Russell Wilson, so he's going to have some retoolage to do. He spent money on the offensive line. He spent money in free agency. He got to pick his staff. If Vic Fangio would have came over, that would have been absolutely great. Of course, we see him go and reside with the Dolphins. Brian Flores, of course, with the Minnesota Vikings. But when you look at the roster of this NFL team, it's undeniable. You look at the defense, you look at what's on the offensive side of the ball, you look at, yes, Russell Wilson did not play good, but I've been saying it all offseason since I started the show, going into the 29th episode here. Russell Wilson and Sean Payton are going to bring things out of each other's game that I think we've never seen before, in the combination of Russell Wilson's athleticism and just grit for the game, combined with Sean Payton's intelligence, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later as well. Combined with that, I believe it has to be at least half open, and I totally hear you. The mountain is with the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at the AFC, how stacked, I mean, maybe it's ever been. When you look at, just the division in general, it's going to be tough. But if the Broncos come out next year and win 10 or 11 games, I'm not shocked, because I believe they're going to have a good turnaround. Now, again, it's not going to be one. I don't see them being in the Super Bowl next year. But the teams that I had put on here, and just kind of before we get any deeper, I don't know if I said this on the show, the teams, I selected the teams. Marcus didn't. He just walked into them with me on the show. The teams I selected, if any of these teams represented their conference, obviously AFC or NFC, in the Super Bowl this year, it wouldn't surprise me, because of how much we've been keeping up with these teams, because of how much has happened in the offseason, and realistically what all of these teams that we're going through present. And if the Broncos being inside of that, if they made it, I wouldn't be shocked. Now, I'm probably not going to say they're going to win it, but again, we don't know depending on how the NFC does turn out. So I'm going to say half open for the Broncos there. Now we go on to the Los Angeles Chargers, which was a kind of a difficult situation for me as well. But you got it.
So for those that follow my show know how much I love Justin Herbert. I do not like the narrative around Justin Herbert. I don't like it at all. We don't have enough time in the show to
He's
unpack
not winning enough games.
To unpack that. The man's 19-20 as a starter. Fine. You don't like that? He's he's half a game under 500 in his career. Whatever.
Right. With a very dysfunctional and
dysfunctional, very unhealthy team on the sidelines, off the sidelines, on the field, off the field. Yeah. So, whatever. But quarterback, so real quick, small rant. You talk about Jimmy G, and people say quarterbacks wins aren't a quarterback stat. Then you get to someone like Justin Herbert, and those same people that say that wins don't count for Jimmy G count them for Justin Herbert. Either wins are a quarterback stat, or they're not. You can't have it both ways. If they're going to count for Jimmy G, they're going to count for Justin Herbert. I believe that wins are a quarterback stat, and so therefore, yes, when you look at Justin Herbert being 19-20 in his career, it doesn't look good. But let's think about what he's had to play with around him. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, who I love and adore, and I think they're phenomenal when they're healthy. Here's the thing, though. They haven't been healthy. Right. When you look at the tight end, I think Jared Cook is the best tight end he's played with so far in his career. Or maybe it's Gerald Everett, but neither of those guys are in their prime. Right. Look at who Pat Mahomes is throwing the ball to. Look at who Lamar Jackson has been throwing the ball to. They've been look at who Jimmy G's throwing the ball to. Look at who Derek Carr has thrown the ball to with the tight end position. And now Jimmy G again with Michael Mayer. Look at who Kirk Cousins is throwing the ball to. Jalen Hurts, Dalton Schultz, I think is phenomenal. Look at who the tight end position is important.
Revolutionary if you score, bro. Every quarterback is different with the tight end. Every quarterback. I don't care how great you are throwing your receivers. If you have that safety blanket, we've seen it with even some of the pissiest arms in the league. Jared Goff and Jimmy G. They can make the big throws, but they love that safety blanket.
Let's think about one of the greatest quarterback tight end duos to ever step foot on a football field for the Chargers. Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates.
Yes, sir.
Regardless of who was on the outside, you could always count on Phillip Rivers to Antonio Gates for a big play. You can always count on Pat Mahomes to Travis Kelce for a big play. And I can keep going. So me personally, I'm a big tight end guy. I do think the Chargers have failed Justin Herbert by not getting him a young, consistently healthy, consistently reliable tight end. That's it there. I have to morally, because I said the Broncos window is closed, I have to say the Chargers window is closed. Because the Broncos on paper are slightly better.
Yeah.
In my heart of hearts, right? And I'm a big fact over feelings guy, but in my heart, because of what I know that Justin Herbert brings to the table, because of what I know that Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams bring to the table when they're healthy, if this is a healthy Chargers team from game 1 to game 17, the window is half open. Because when healthy, this team can compete with anybody.
Yes.
But logistically,
You're good.
They unfortunately are not on the same level as the Broncos. And so because I said the Broncos window is closed, I just have to say the Chargers window is closed. That's my objective football analysis.
Yeah.
Subjectively, if you're just asking me, do I think the Chargers compete for a championship? Absolutely. I think they can compete for a championship this season if they're healthy. But objectively, it's closed.
Yeah. And I'm just a step above you there because I originally wanted to say it was wide open, and here's why. Like, when are the Chargers going to get any more damn loaded on paper, right? Like, we remember the offseason last year.
Yeah.
J.C. Jackson for a freaking bag of chips. They get Khalil Mack. You know, Derwin James is supposed to come back healthy. I mean, all the moves that they were making, you know, they bring in Eric Kendricks. You know, Joey Bosa needs to come back healthy as well. So it gets to a point where it's like, how much more talent can the league really give you before you have to pay Justin Herbert?
Yeah.
Like, he's probably going to be him or Burrow will probably be the highest paid quarterbacks ever in NFL history just because of the hype that's around them. And in my opinion, they both deserve it because we both know what they're capable of. Some people would only say Burrow and not Justin Herbert, but how many more chances will the Chargers actually get before Justin Herbert comes and eats $250 million at least? Maybe he wants a Patrick Mahomes type deal because he's telling you, crossing his heart on the Bible, I want to be here for the next 15 years. How are you going to possibly react to that then? I'm not here to speculate about Justin Herbert's contract, but again, you only get so many chances before that payday comes, before those players that are consistently unhealthy might want to retire. Or maybe they want to go play in another scheme because they might not feel like this scheme is suiting their game well enough to actually keep them healthy. And yes, that's an actual thing. Your coach can use you in an incorrect way and not to your skill set enough to where you can hurt yourself, to where you can exhaust yourself. And realistically, with a head coach like Brandon Staley, who I had all of the hope in the world for coming over being the D coordinator with the Rams and just winning the Super Bowl, or I think, did he come over after they won the Super Bowl?
He did.
Okay. So coming out of that setting, I was like, oh, let's go. Like, let's go. I was hyped. I kind of felt the same way when Mike McCarthy came over. He knew how to run the football. Zeke was still in that time. And then it kind of fell apart. And that's why we have to keep it, I guess, half open for the Cowboys, right? I think you might have said wide open. But, you know, McCarthy's a big X factor. So when you take a look at Brandon Staley here, like, I was hyped when he comes in. I'm like, okay, great. This guy's been in the culture. He's worked next to Sean McVay. He's been to a couple Super Bowls. He finally won one. Like, they have made things happen. And then they go and they blow the lead to the Jaguars after Trevor Lawrence throws 4 interceptions in the first half. And it's just like the Chargers are going to charge her. So let me get to my point here, right? I feel like I'm one step above you. I want to say they're wide open because of how loaded they really are on paper. And if from week 1 to week 17, like you said, they could be completely healthy, I would say that it's wide open. But I'm going to go half open because of the health. And because what is Brandon Staley actually going to do in these critical moments in the season? Because we've seen him fall short. We just had it in the playoffs. Chargers fans probably want to close up shop, not close the window, close up shop. After losing that game in the playoffs. I mean, let's be real. It was humiliating. Everybody went right back to their Charger standards, and they just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. Newsflash, Chargers, you got a big, 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 big payday coming up. And the AFC is stacked. So I want to say wide open, but I'm going to go half open here. Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champs. I feel like we're both going to ride the same way, but I'll still let you get it out.
This is the second easiest one on the list. I don't know if there's anything more open than wide open, but I know you wanted this to be a quick fire segment. So this is the quick fire part of the segment that's lasted almost an hour now. It's wide open.
It's all good.
What's understood doesn't have to be explained. Like I can go on a soliloquy for you if you'd like, but there's no need. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It's wide open. As long as Pat Mahomes is playing football, it's wide open.
Literally ditto, brother. So we'll roll on into the only team in the AFC South that I feel like could really represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of hype. Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson. How do you feel? Calvin Ridley coming back.
So initially I wanted to say half open.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted to give some breathing room for Trevor Lawrence to take another step this year.
Right.
And
I feel you.
And I think he can. But
Feel
then
like
I
we're
started
anointing him
thinking.
faster than we did Herbert.
And here's what I'm thinking. Trevor Lawrence, and again, sorry for the spoiler, Trevor Lawrence for me right now is a top 10 quarterback in the league.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. At least
And
going into next year.
Yeah, and he's in the for me, he's in the 6 to 8 range.
Yeah, that's fair.
When I'm thinking about like the jumps we've seen some quarterbacks make the past couple seasons, right? We saw Jalen Hurts make a top 10 jump into the top 5, but he wasn't in the top 10 beforehand. We saw Joe Burrow make a jump from like that. So for me, the jump we could see Trevor Lawrence make this season is the jump we saw Joe Burrow make from rookie season to second season in the league.
Right.
And a lot of it, of course, for Joe had to do with the fact he missed a lot of time because he blew his ACL in Washington. But Joe Burrow went from being a 6 to 8 guy to being, spoiler, again, the second best quarterback in football. In my opinion.
I'm right there with you.
Trevor Lawrence, to me, this season, if he takes another jump, which he had the biggest year 1 to year 2 jump the league has ever seen in every statistical category for a quarterback. He has the potential to go from 6 to 8 to being at worst the third or fourth best quarterback in football.
Yeah, I'm not mad about that.
If he does that this season, then this season the Jaguars championship window is wide open. Let's look at that game they had against the Chiefs. I know they lost.
But if
there was a game this entire Chiefs run where I was thoroughly concerned during the game, even after having picked the Chiefs they might lose, it was that Jacksonville game.
Exactly.
There was a very, very, very clear moment when you could see, and I know people say it's overrated, but it's not. There were clear moments down the stretch of the first half when you can see the experience of the Chiefs and the inexperience of the Jaguars shoot the Jaguars in the foot. And we're talking about a Jaguars team that is going to be adding Calvin Ridley into the fold. You have Travis Etienne Jr. You have, I would say, one of, if not the best O-line in the AFC. You have a reliable defense. You have Christian Kirk. You have Evan Ingram. Dare I say the Jaguars championship window is wide open? Because who can't they beat? Because if you're in a game with the Bills, it's a shootout. They could win a shootout against the Bills. If you're in a game with the Bengals, it's a shootout.
I kind of like the Jags offense better than Buffalo's right now.
And I agree.
Diggs was a little concerned, and I've been waiting. Like, can we have a little Dawson Knox surge? We know Isaiah McKenzie and Gabe Davis ain't it. Like, you bring in Deontay Hardy. Where's D-Hop? Like,
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And I would just say this. There's two very stark differences between the structures of the top 3 to 4 teams in the AFC and the structures of the top 3 to 4 teams in the NFC. When you look at the Eagles, the Niners, the Cowboys, and I don't know, I guess you want to throw the Seahawks in there. All 4 of those teams have elite defenses, or the Seahawks have a really good one. The other 3 have elite defenses.
Right.
The Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, and I would say the Jags are the 4th best team in the division. They have 3 really elite offenses, and the Jags have a really, really, really good offense potentially. Those other 3 teams and the Jags, the defenses aren't scaring anybody. I think the Jags can win a shootout against the Bills. I think the Jags can win a shootout against the Bengals. I think the Jags can win a shootout against the Chiefs. I think the Jags Super Bowl window is wide open. If Trevor Lawrence makes that jump, the jump that Joe Burrow did from year 1 from year 1 to year 2, well, really from year 2 to year 3, the same way the Jaguars could make it to and potentially win a Super Bowl this season.
Right there with you. Absolutely wide open as well. And I feel you on wanting to have that reservation for Trevor Lawrence because I feel like we're anointing him quicker than Justin Herbert only because of how hyped up a prospect he was. Because Justin Herbert's rookie year as a quarterback, he was a top 10 quarterback as a rookie. I mean, that was mind-blowing to actually have to take that in And when you're like, oh, why was he 4,200 yards, like what, 32 touchdowns,
The greatest rookie
10
season
picks.
we've ever seen.
ever. I mean, he literally his first 3 games are against he gets a 5-minute notice to start against Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he I want to say he played. Did he go back and forth with Brady or Rodgers after that?
He went back and forth with Brady in the shootout. It was like 42-45.
And then he comes into New Orleans and takes a lead until Drew Brees finally gets it together. And he wasn't even the he was Drew Brees, was the second best quarterback on the field that night. Unfortunately, Justin Herbert was just lighting it up. I mean, I was like, damn, can the Saints actually stop this? So I say all that to say, I totally know what you mean about wanting to keep it half open. But when you look at everything, like, this team has turned around quick. I love Doug Peterson here. I absolutely love him here. Like, we forget he won the last Super Bowl with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We forget that, or at least I feel like some people do. Like, we have to give him that knowledge, and I understand the league is a lot different than from when it was when they won the Super Bowl. But let's not kid ourselves. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, you got Travis Etienne. I mean, you named all the players that are coming back, and then you go and actually look at the defense between Josh Allen, Devin Lloyd, Foyesay Oluokun, who is one of the top linebackers in the league. Very quiet over there in Atlanta.
Led the league in tackles a couple years ago.
Exactly. So when I saw the Jaguars make that move, I was like, I really like that. Trayvon Walker out of Georgia, Tyson Campbell out of Georgia. If they make a free agency move at the right time within the AFC this year, they could have the momentum, maybe not swing all the way their way, because I still have a lot of love for the Chiefs and the Bengals, of course, but I'm going to say it's wide open as well. I mean, it's time for this team. Look at everything that they have in front of them. Trevor Lawrence, even if he doesn't take a major leap, I still think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback coming into next year. And the Jaguars Super Bowl window is absolutely wide open as well for me.
Super quick before we go to the next team.
Yeah, you're good.
It just came into my mind. I haven't heard anyone say this. I'm not recycling any take. This is an original thought from this noggin. And I usually save all my original thoughts for my show, but I'm not talking football for a while. So if there's anywhere I'm going to drop an original thought as spicy as this one, I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else than on the NFL with AJL.
My man.
We've talked about the Chiefs. We've talked about the Bills. We've talked about the Cowboys. We've seen rumblings about even the Patriots, maybe the Titans, as being potential landing spots for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
I don't know if he's visited, but I do think we should give some serious thought about maybe the Jaguars making a call to DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that they've been missing, despite the talent, is, again, we talked about the same thing that we talked about with Justin Herbert in the tight end. I'll put it with Trevor Lawrence. Every young guy needs a vet they can rely on in the clutch.
Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins, despite the injuries the past couple seasons, could fit in perfectly with this Jaguars team.
Yep.
He wouldn't have to be the number one receiver, but he probably would be, because I think even to this point in his career, he's still probably better than a Christian Kirk or he is better than Christian Kirk. He's probably better than Calvin Ridley as well at this point. But even if he's not, even if he's wide receiver 2, what you'd be looking at is a team in the AFC, only the second team in the AFC that has a legit trio at the wide receiver position. The only other team in the AFC that can say they have a legit, reliable trio at wide receiver is Cincinnati. They've got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. If you add D-Hop to Jacksonville, that makes them the only other team in the AFC that has a legitimate, threatening trio at the wide receiver position. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. If D-Hop goes to Jacksonville, and I don't think Jacksonville is on his radar, and I don't think D-Hop is on Jacksonville's radar, but if at some point that happens, and I think it could,
I'm there with you. I want to say I put him on the last season. I'd like to see him in.
We saw just last offseason with the NBA, like, it looked like Donovan Mitchell was going to the Knicks, and then here comes the Cavs out of nowhere. I think we can see the Jaguars do something very similar and just kind of come out of nowhere and land DeAndre Hopkins. That sets them apart even more. There's a lot of people I think don't want to put them on that tier with the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills just yet. And so they're kind of like on a tier by themselves. Or at the very least, they're on a tier with like the Ravens.
Right.
But the Jacksonville Jaguars with DeAndre Hopkins firmly cement themselves on a tier with the elite teams in the AFC. Yep. I 100% think the Jacksonville Jaguars should make a call to DeAndre Hopkins, because that only further lengthens the championship window. So if at the very least it's half
And
open
helps
right
Trevor
now,
Lawrence so
it can be
much.
wide open next season. But I do think it's wide open right now. But I just thought about that when we were talking. I think DeAndre Hopkins to Jacksonville could be a match made in heaven.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was saying, I'd love him to the Chiefs. I'd love him to the Bills. I'd love him to the Ravens. But, like, if you're really talking about a guy that's on that pivotal point of his breakthrough, I guess his junior breakthrough, no sophomore slump clearly with Trevor Lawrence, and you give him a guy like D-Hop who could easily be the one but could also slide into the two if Calvin Ridley's more healthy or he could just carry more of the load because DeAndre Hopkins has been in the league, about a decade. And I feel like he's on that point now to where, okay, let me take my talents to a team where I can actually push for a title. I don't think the Patriots are one of those teams. I don't think the Titans are one of those teams. I do believe Jacksonville is one of those teams when you talk about the likes of the Chiefs, when you talk about the likes of the Bills that are actually looking for that secondary weapon, or maybe in their case, that third or fourth weapon, but just to triple and quadruple down in the most stacked AFC conference that we've ever seen. So we move out of the NFC South, AFC South. We only had one team there. Now we've got the entire AFC
I love
North.
this. I
Me
love
too.
this.
It's going to be
when
interesting.
I saw the entire division, I love this. I love this so much.
I snuck the Steelers in there at the end because I have to appreciate their draft, and realistically, outside of Kenny Pickett, what they are built to right now, we're going to start there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. How do you feel about their Super Bowl window?
I think it's half open. I think it has a lot to do with what we see from Kenny Pickett this season. Number one, this is a team that's coached by Mike Tomlin.
Yep.
Who's still through 17 seasons, I believe.
Yep. Never
had a
losing season.
When you look at the draft they had, I'm a big legacy guy.
Yep.
And when the game is in your blood, that means something.
Yep.
And when the game's in your blood and you get drafted to where your bloodline already exists, that means a little bit more.
Yep.
Joey Porter.
Yep.
Being drafted to the team where his father made his money.
Yep.
In Pittsburgh. I love it. This is a Pittsburgh defense that I think is going to take that next step. This is a Pittsburgh defense that is going to look like a Pittsburgh defense this season. George Pickens, real deal. Deontay Johnson, real deal. I think Najee Harris is going to be better this season because for the first time since he's been there, the Steelers have finally made a concerted effort to improve the offensive line. And I think we're going to see a lot of that this season. So I'm going to say it's half open because I got to give respect to my guy, Mike Tomlin. I got to give respect to what they did on the defensive side of the ball.
I had to put them on there because of Mike, I felt like.
Have to. We watched Kenny Pickett start, 9 games last season?
Yeah, they went 7-2 down the stretch.
7 of them in those, I think
it was 7-2 or 6-3, but either way, for a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, he won 6 or 7 games, which for a rookie quarterback, if you take that pace of 9 games and you just double it theoretically, because there's 16, 17 games in a season now, you're talking about a 12-ish win team somewhere around there theoretically if you just duplicate it. That's what it's on pace for. That's a 12-ish pace win season. We'll say 11 just to be on the safe side because the game is missing there on the other half. I think this is a team that can win 9 or 10 games. I think this is a team that's going to make the lives of all the teams in their division and all the other teams in the conference that they have to play a living hell. It's half open in Pittsburgh, 100%.
I'm definitely going to say it's half open as well for all of the same reasons you explained. We have an elite defense, or not we. They have an elite defense. They have an elite, culture, an elite defensive culture. We know what they've done with Mike Tomlin over the years. When you look at how Kenny Pickett did have that record on the back half of the year, being plugged into a very interesting situation where they didn't know really what it was going to be after Big Ben, right? You see Najee Harris. You see we didn't even mention Darnell Washington out of Georgia, who was my number 1 tight end actually coming into the draft. When you look at his length, when you look how he's really going to be able to be a dual threat tight end, whether you need him to block or whether you need him to have that speed, run those routes with that just unfair athleticism, and then all being led by Mike Tomlin, J.J. Watt. Patrick Peterson is now in the black and yellow, which is going to be absolutely great. What an addition. Joey Porter, great draft. Great culture, and I can't believe I almost left them off the Super Bowl windows here. Definitely a half-open team. Let's go to the Cleveland Browns, the Dog Pound. Love that new alternate logo they dropped, I think, last time I did a show, ironically. Very, very fire. You got it, man. Cleveland Browns.
I'm going to say it's half open.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has
half.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's the potential to be wide depending on the version of Deshaun Watson that we get.
Correct.
If we get 75 to 80% of the Deshaun Watson we saw before all the nonsense happened with him off the field, you're talking about a Super Bowl contender, and you're talking about a team that would be getting a return on their investment. Let's also not forget who they have in their backfield. It's the best back in football, Nick Chubb. They've got a guy in Myles Garrett on the other side of the ball that I think should be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and probably will win the award this year, potentially. This is a well-rounded roster. The one question mark, though, is what version of Deshaun are we getting?
Yep.
Are we going to get the Deshaun Watson we saw last season, still really, really rusty? Or are we going to get 75-80% of the Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston when we looked at the Houston Texans potentially being one of the best teams in football, and we looked at Deshaun Watson being the caliber of Patrick Mahomes? It's half open for me.
I'm going to say it's wide open because when you look at this team, and yes, a lot of it rides on Deshaun Watson, but I believe, kind of spoiling it, it's the last segment on the show, top 10 quarterbacks. I believe Deshaun's going to be top 10 again next year. Before Deshaun had all of that off-field stuff going on and before all of that craziness happened in Houston, I said Deshaun Watson was the quarterback in the NFL that most mimicked Patrick Mahomes. When you look at how he moves on the field, when you look at how he can be elusive and run like a Josh Allen if he needs to, he can sling it like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow. But this was before Josh Allen and Joe Burrow really put themselves in the conversation, right? But I'm not going to forget what Deshaun Watson was in his final year of final year of Houston. And anybody that wants to take him missing his 11 games and saying that he's not the same player, you simply just don't know football. You have to know that what Deshaun Watson did in the NFL before his crazy off-field things. And yes, you might think it's wild that Deshaun Watson is back in the league, but it is what he is. It is what it is. He is with the Cleveland Browns, and I believe he's going to be a great quarterback this year. Love Kevin Stefanski at that head coach. We know about the defense. The offense with the Cleveland Browns is very exciting. Amari Cooper had a very quiet but great year last year, a quiet, great season, rather. Of course, we know about Nick Chubb. We know about the other offensive players as well, the defensive front seven that they actually bring to the table. So I'm going to say it's wide open. When you have Deshaun Watson playing all 17 games this year, when you didn't really know what the case was going to be, with Baker Mayfield leaving, now he's a Carolina Panther, like who was going to be their quarterback? They winged it. Deshaun's there. He's got the big contract. I definitely have to say it's wide open. Moving on to the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, the Ravens are a tough one for me because I'm not buying what the Ravens are selling. I'll be honest. This defense has not been what it's supposed to be the past couple seasons. I understand they brought in OBJ. I understand they drafted Zay Flowers. They still have Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay. They've got, the talent is there. I'm not denying the talent. Because of the talent, I'm going to say half open.
Yeah. Because
this is a talented roster. I think what people have done is they have convinced themselves, though, that the Cincinnati Bengals have risen to the heights they've risen to more so because of the absence of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens and not because of who Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals are.
I got to agree there. That's a really, really good point.
Very good point. And I 100% think that if Lamar's healthy 1 through 17, a lot of the people in that camp that have that belief are going to be in for a rude awakening because the Bengals are the real deal. And when I look at it from that perspective, when I look at it from the perspective of, man, Lamar Jackson only beat Pat Mahomes one time just a couple years ago. When I think about the fact that we hold Dak Prescott to such a standard where he has one playoff win in, 4 attempts, and Lamar Jackson has the exact same. When I think about the fact that Jalen Hurts has 2 playoff wins in 3 attempts, when I look at it from that, not including the Super Bowl, obviously, if you include the Super Bowl, he's 2-2 in the playoffs. When I think about what Trevor Lawrence has done and how Trevor Lawrence has already matched the win total for Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, when I think about all of those things, I have to look at the Baltimore Ravens and I have to say, man, I understand who Lamar Jackson was, but who is Lamar Jackson now? Is Lamar Jackson still Action Jackson? Right. Is Lamar Jackson still a top 10, top 5 quarterback in football? Right. Is Lamar Jackson still a needle mover? Is Lamar Jackson
and the bag affects you too?
It does. Is Lamar Jackson still a Super Bowl caliber quarterback? Right. I don't know. Right. And because I don't know, and I'll say this as well, and I know it's the MVP season, and the MVP season is usually the best season of your career.
Right.
Let's also talk about the fact that since that MVP, he hasn't been the same. Nope. And it's not like his numbers have dropped off a bit. No. The season after his MVP was worse than the season before. Yep. And this past season was worse than the season before. But more importantly, look at what Tyler Huntley did with this football team without Lamar Jackson. They almost beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. And so because of the talent, I have to say that it's wide open. I have to because of the talent. But my honest, subjective opinion, looking at the landscape of the AFC, unfortunately, I have to say it's closed. I don't know if the Baltimore Ravens can beat the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know if the Baltimore Ravens can beat the Bills. I don't know if they can beat the Chiefs. I don't know if they can beat the Jets, maybe, or the Broncos, maybe. We talked about it a lot. This conference is stacked.
Yep.
This isn't the conference of 5 years ago.
Nope.
When Lamar won MVP, or 4 years ago when Lamar won MVP.
This
is a much different conference.
Conference and division too.
Absurd.
Yep.
Toughest conference, toughest division. There's obviously a case for it to be open. There's obviously a case for it to be half open. There's a case obviously for it to be wide open.
Yep.
But when I look across the conference, and when I look at specifically what I'm seeing in Baltimore, I don't know if it's enough for me to say definitively that this is a team that can compete for a championship this season. I can be wrong. I've been wrong about teams before. I was wrong about the Bucs a couple of years ago when they got Tom Brady, and I don't mind being wrong. Being wrong is fine.
Right.
I always say I'd much rather be late to the party than be early and dead wrong.
Yep.
I'll be late and wrong. I don't want to be early and wrong because being early and wrong is embarrassing.
That's when they pull the receipts on you.
Yeah, then they pull the receipts on you. I don't mind being late and wrong. I don't mind having a come to Jesus moment halfway through the season when you get to November, December, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong about the Ravens.
Yeah.
As of right now, though, I'm gonna say it's half open because of the talent, but I really want to say it's closed. I really do.
Yeah. You made really good points there, man, with all three. I won't lie. I originally had it as walking into the show, and that's because of the talent, like electrifying Action Jackson, OBJ comes in. I'm very excited about Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews is still intact, but how healthy is the defense? How healthy is the defense going to be? How healthy is the secondary going to be? How healthy is Lamar going to be? How healthy are the running backs going to be? Because that's been a question we've seen every year after the MVP year. And that's why some people were shocked when Lamar Jackson, without an official agent, actually got his deal. You really want to say wide open because when they're healthy, which felt like completely healthy throughout an entire season, which some might say, oh, that's not absolutely possible. No, it can happen because usually those healthy teams at the right time are the ones that end up going on, and people want to act surprised, but it's like, no, they hit the bye, they got healthy, just like the Bucs in the pandemic here. They hit the bye, got healthy, didn't lose another one, and ended up winning the Super Bowl. And I kind of had a come to Jesus moment in that season too early on. I think it was after I can't remember. It was after the Bucs played a certain game. Maybe it was against my Saints, but it's still on my page. It was the Monday morning after pill when I did that segment, and I was like, the Bucs are not Super Bowl contenders, and I gave off my reasons. And then as the playoffs got closer, and really then once the Super Bowl showed up, like once it was Chiefs Bucs. Even if the Chiefs would have had the O-line, I still would have taken Tampa because the defense was insane that year, and Tom Brady was clearly on a mission. But so kind of reeling it back to the Ravens there, I get you on it closed as well because when you look at the conference, at the division, you're like, damn, unhealthy quarterback and an unhealthy team in the grand scheme of things. So when you look through this just division, it's going to be tough for them. I'm going to go and adjust to half open though because of the durability of the team. Lamar Jackson's never thrown for 4,000 yards. And I'm not the guy that's out here like, oh, Lamar's a running back. He can't throw the football. He's not a strong thrower of the football, but at times he can make any throw on the field. And that doesn't go for every quarterback in the league because Lamar Jackson does have that in him to be the MVP. We've seen that before. Can he stay healthy? How is he going to play with the major contract? Can his team stay healthy? I don't doubt Harbaugh at all. I don't doubt Harbaugh whatsoever. But as much as you say what Tyler Huntley did when he was filling in for Lamar Jackson, look how different they looked when Lamar Jackson was not under center or taking snaps in the shotgun.
Sure.
They weren't scoring as many points. They weren't winning as many games. They weren't producing as many yards. So I am going to have to stay at half open there. I'd love to say wide open. And the reason I want to lean wide open is because we've been foaming at the mouth like, okay, Ravens, okay, Chargers, okay, Bills. Like, what are we doing here? And that's kind of where I've got the Ravens positioned at this moment. Cincinnati Bengals, we might go the same way as we did with the Kansas City Chiefs. But you've been surprising me. And I honestly scratched this topic when I was going to do it on a solo show, but I was like, no, let me bring it in with a guest. And honestly, it's been great, dude. So I don't want to assume you're going to say wide open with the Bengals. So let me have it.
Hey, anybody that knows me, I got 3 words for you. Joseph Lee Burrow. He's the best quarterback in football, not named Pat Mahomes. He proved it time and time again. I'm not going to go on a soliloquy. What's understood doesn't have to be explained. Again, like Chiefs was the easiest one. Eagles was the second easiest one. This is the third. It's wide open. It's wide open. Until proven otherwise,
Yep.
the Cincinnati Bengals will be the biggest threat to Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Why? They're the only team in the Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs era to beat them multiple times.
Yep.
We haven't seen that often.
Right.
Joe Burrow has multiple wins over Pat Mahomes, more importantly, in crucial situations.
Yep.
He leads their all-time head-to-head. Actually, I think it's because this they're gonna play again this season on New Year's Eve. It'll be Pat Mahomes. It'll be Mahomes Burrow 5. If I'm not mistaken,
love that you know that
Burrow's up 3-1 in the series because they won the game in the regular season in Arrowhead, and then they won the AFC Championship game, and then they won another one in the regular season last season, I believe. And then I know Pat has at least one because, of course, they just played in the AFC Championship game last year, and they won that one. It's either a 2-2 series or a 3-1 series. I want to say the Bengals, Joe Burrow and the Bengals are up
3-1.
on that 3-1. I want to say it's 3-1 because I think the Bengals did win that third game because it was at home and it was a big deal.
Yeah,
because people thought that Pat Mahomes was going to come to Cincy and do what Burrow and them did in Arrowhead. But yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they're up 3-1. So
yeah, you're right. I'm looking at an article right now, beginning of this year, January 29th of this year. They were talking about how he was 3-0 going into the AFC. The Chiefs beat him this year,
and then they lost because they wanted to call it Burrowhead and all this other stuff.
We want to get a paternity test to see if Joe Burrow is your daddy. Bit you in the ass so hard. Learned a lesson real quick. Yeah,
that one bit him in the butt real quick. They wouldn't have done that. We could talk about 4-0, but 3 wins over Pat Mahomes is a big deal. And so I would say the Bengals window is wide open. They were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago against the Rams. So as long as Burrow's healthy, as long as Jamar is there, and as long as they're still continuing to build around them and keep that O-line as healthy and as durable as possible, it's wide open. 3 wins over Pat Mahomes is a big deal.
100%. Ditto on everything. Absolutely wide open. Last division here. We do have more topics on the show, ladies and gentlemen. This has just been a really awesome Super Bowl 58 window segment. Probably going to chop this up into divisions because it's been a little over an hour, but no worries. I know we're getting through it, and I'm glad that I brought you on for this segment, man. Let's go on now to the AFC East, and we'll start with the highly headlined team of the offseason, New York Jets.
What is the Super Bowl window for Green Bay Packers East? I'm gonna
Jesus Christ.
I'm not gonna say it's closed.
Because
I want to give respect to the defense. I do want to give respect to the defense. I do want to give respect to Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams and the crew on defense.
Right.
I'm gonna say it's half open. My 2 big apprehensions is I'm not as sold on Robert Saleh as a head coach as a lot of people are.
Right.
And we have seen up close and personal, as a Packers fan, have seen the movie when Aaron Rodgers wants all his guys to be on the team with them.
Yeah, bro.
And it's resulted in nothing.
Yep. That's why I said the Jets should have ran.
Because of that,
but
I understand 100%. You're trying to win your first Super Bowl since Super Bowl 3. From 55 years ago.
You're right. You got a QB mentioning the trophy as soon as he walks in.
You do what you got to do. The Super Bowl 3's trophy, it's dusty.
Yeah.
Probably has some mold on it. It is old. 55 years ago. I understand.
Like galvanized steel or something. They don't even make that 100%. Anymore.
I understand the desperation behind going to get an Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to say it's half open.
Yeah.
I'm just apprehensive about if the offense is going to be what a lot of people are expecting it to be.
Yeah.
Because it is a Green Bay Packers East offensively.
Right.
For being like it is.
Right.
And if it didn't work in Green Bay, I can't imagine a change of scenery and a different shade of green is going to make that offense click, especially because this division's tougher than the NFC North is as well.
Yeah.
Which is something to consider. So it's not closed. I'll say it's half open. But if they don't win a championship in the next 2 years,
right,
which is how long they have Aaron Rodgers for, really, if we're being honest.
Maybe just one.
Maybe just
laugh
one.
My ass off in the offseason
but
next year if he's pulling his shenanigans.
Yeah, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they have 2.
Right.
It's half open. It's half open.
Now I feel you there, definitely. Half open. Is fair. So I'm going to go wide open because of the Aaron Rodgers move. Like you said, they have 2 years. Like this is the most open their Super Bowl window has ever been. Maybe besides when Mark Sanchez took them to the AFC chip and then they lose to the Colts. And then, my boys in the New Orleans Saints beat the Colts in the Super Bowl, but we'll stick to the topic here. I'm just apprehensive about, it's a big change for Aaron Rodgers. He talks about how hard it was for Green Bay to turn him away, and before he went into the darkness, it was take as much time as you need, and then you come out of the darkness, and apparently it's different, and you should FaceTime me. I don't have signal at my house. Come on, man. We've seen you not mesh, and I've been saying this has been my spiel for the Jets. We've seen Aaron Rodgers call for the players before. So when the list came out, I was like, oh boy, here's the red flag early and often. Like, you just picked the dude up. You still have to negotiate the contract, and here comes the list. Was he going to get the list? Yes, he got some of the players. But it's always been, can Aaron Rodgers mesh with new teammates? Can he mesh with younger players? Because it was kind of like Brady. If you mess up in Rodgers' eyes, he's not going to look your way again. He's not going to trust you. He's not going to throw the ball your way. What if Breece Hall fumbles? What if Garrett Wilson doesn't catch a clutch pass? What if something happens and maybe he gets pissed because Sauce Gardner slips on a coverage and Aaron Rodgers has already thrown for 520 yards and he's got to go back out there? People might think I'm crazy and they think I'm going too psychologically deep with Aaron Rodgers, but this is him as a character. This is what his headlines come out for. This is why the man took ayahuasca and went into the darkness, because he's Aaron Rodgers. Still going to say it's wide open because of everything that they had to do to bring him in, but I feel you on the half open. I would say half open because I'm apprehensive about him meshing with that offense, but they have no choice. Or maybe you'd want to be apprehensive because of Robert Saleh being there, but he ironically is not bothering me as much because of what we saw the Jets do. Yes, they did peak early last year, but they were dealing with Zach Wilson, Mike White, and I think Joe Flacco actually started week 1. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins, though, who have a great roster. As much as I want to say outside the quarterback, maybe I want to lean off of that, but dang, it's kind of like I want to lean back in because you don't know what's up with Tua. How are you feeling about the Dolphins, man?
I'm going to say it's closed.
That's hard to say with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at the receiving core, I know.
So here's why I'm going to say it's closed. I'm going to say it's closed because they're not on the level of the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Jaguars, in my opinion. Yeah. And those are the 4 best teams in the conference.
Right.
They're just in the log jam of like Ravens, Browns, Jets, Dolphins, Chargers, Broncos. They're in that log jam.
Yep.
And there's a handful of teams in that log jam that I can see winning a championship this season.
I'm right there
the
with
Jets,
you.
we just talked about. Maybe the Broncos, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Ravens, maybe the Browns. I don't know if there's enough room for another maybe.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Dolphins have been a victim of too much going on before.
Yeah.
If you remember, a couple years ago, they won 10 games and missed the playoffs.
Yep.
Because too many teams won 10 games.
For them. Yep.
And that was kind of, I'm pretty sure behind the scenes, that was the catalyst behind getting that 7th team in there because, wait a second, you've got 7 teams going double digits and they can't make the playoffs. I think behind closed doors, that was the catalyst behind the NFL wanting to add that 7th team. This is a roster that has the talent to win a championship. They're just, unfortunately, I think they're stuck in the log jam. It's not that I can't see them doing it again. Late to the party, don't mind it. It's not that they can peak and they can be where they were last season. Right now, it's tough. It's really tough. And there's one team that's got to be left on the cold. For me, that team is the Dolphins. Because I do think the Jets will be second in the division.
Yeah.
No one in the AFC no division in the AFC is putting in 3 teams. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately. And I think, unfortunately, the Dolphins are going to be the odd man out again.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Miami because, that's another team. I feel like within a couple years of Tua's, giving them about 60% all year, and then whether it's injuries or, we just figure out that Tua's not necessarily as great as everyone thinks he is. And I'm kind of on that spectacle too. Like we saw last year when he played higher defensive teams or just better teams, the stats weren't there, but he was able to play. And, we went crazy after we had the touchdown passes in the game against the Ravens and he's shooting out with Lamar Jackson and all that. But I mean, you look at the roster of the Dolphins on both sides of the ball, whether you're talking about the backfield, which is crazy fast, when you're talking about the receivers, which is crazy fast. I hate that Gesicki's not there anymore. That would feel even better. Of course, you go and look at the defensive side of the ball. Bringing in Jalen Ramsey is absolutely great. We know a couple of, some of the other pieces that are out there too. I'm going to say half open, though, because we don't know what the deal is with Tua. If Tua was as great as everyone says he is, then you could say wide open, because this team's here. Mike McDaniel, very impressive. Like, knowing that he put together that compilation tape to really buy back in on Tua's mentality and just get him tapped into the game of the NFL, that was absolutely heartwarming. That was very original. So knowing that all of that is tied up inside of the Miami Dolphins, it makes you want to lean wide open because of everything they have again, but question marks with Tua, and really wanting to see more than just one good year out of Mike McDaniel really makes me leave them half open. Last team here for our Super Bowl 58 windows before we talk about the insane talent that ESPN laid off, the Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl 58 window.
I feel like you have to say it's wide open just because they've been flirting with it for the past couple years.
Right.
And so I'm going to say it's wide open. I don't want to get into the ins and the outs of it because I can 100% talk myself out of the Bills window being wide open. I can. Right. I'm going to stick because they've been flirting with it for so long these past couple seasons. AFC Championship game loss, divisional round loss, another divisional round loss this past season as well. Because they've been flirting with it for so much, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to say it's wide open. But if I sit down and I start picking apart this Bills defense this Bills football team top to bottom and all the nuances and the innuendos of the coaching staff and the offensive line and all that other stuff, I can very easily talk myself into half open. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. An AFC Championship game appearance a couple years ago, and then 2 divisional game losses in a row. I'm going to give them I'll give them wide open because they've been flirting with it. I'll give them wide open.
I was about to say, you better put your answer out there, bro, because I can tell you're just like,
They're tiptoeing on the line, man. They're tiptoeing on the line, but I'll give them wide open.
Yeah, they're too good. I'm right there with you, wide open as well. They're too damn talented, especially at the quarterback position and with everything that's around Josh Allen, to not be wide open. And like you said, they flirted with it for years. I mean, you got the Stephon Diggs, hook up there that totally brings Josh Allen out of his shell and gets him over the hump. Sean McDermott is, just becoming a better coach every year. But that Bills defense that we saw a few seasons ago, and even, just last season or the season before, like, it's still good. It can still be elite, but it was also kind of like the Vikings defense at one point that was one of the best in the league. It didn't quickly tailor off, but you saw some of that effectiveness kind of go to the wayside in the last couple seasons. And yes, we have a lot of respect for the Bills. We know the secondary wasn't the healthiest at times. We know the defense necessarily wasn't the healthiest at times. So just like with the Rams, when you have some of your key players, or in that case, best players on your defensive side of the ball, it's going to become difficult, but no question about it, the Bills championship window is absolutely wide open. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 29 of the NFL with AJL. Big episode coming back out of the gates. I know I was gone there for a few weeks. Please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you're watching. Also subscribe on YouTube. Scan that QR code in the corner of the screen by Marcus to find every bit of our podcast content at the NFL with AJL. Get at us on social media and podcast platforms as well. And please do all of the same for the fellow guest at GTP Markets that's on the show with us tonight. And of course, never forget, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, make sure to hit up at Buy and Sell with AJL on all social media platforms. Now, we had some major news in terms of sports analysts, the 4-letter company, like some people like to say, whether they're a former employee of the company, whether we're out here making our own gig like we are on the show right now. I've got respect for ESPN, though. Yeah. But Disney did say that there was a wave of 7,000 layoffs coming, and people were just hoping that it wasn't them. The reputable wave of layoffs that just came through took about 20 members of their on-air talent. We're talking Max Kellerman, Susie Colbert, Keyshawn Johnson, Jeff Van Gundy, Todd McShay, Jalen Rose, Steve Young, Neil Everett, and even Ashley Brewer, who only rotated SportsCenter, but she got laid off days before her wedding. Neil Everett, 23 years on SportsCenter. Steve Young, been with the company since 2000. I mean, they cut an average of 20 years of experience. When you just add up all the experience from those few people I named there and you divide it out, they cut an average of 20 years of experience. Max Kellerman, Keyshawn Johnson, KJM is no more. Susie Colbert, 38 years in the business, 27 years with the company, an absolute legend. She says that her next project is something to give back. Big shocker on Todd McShay, Jalen Rose, Jeff Van Gundy. You guys heard the names, though, but we'll start from the top. I know it was the second question, but I'll make it the first one here. And even if I didn't list it, who is the most shocking release to you now that ESPN's first wave of layoffs has been established?
I don't want to mess his name up, and I'm a big fan of his, and shame on me for not getting his name before I came on. David Pollock?
Yeah, David Pollock. That
one broke my heart. As a fan of as a personal favorite of as I call them with my friends Davey P.
Yeah.
I was hurt by that one. Yeah. I was hurt. There are not many people that get me invested in college football the way that David Pollock has.
Yep.
Todd McShay.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Another one that was kind of like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Dude that babysits the NFL mock draft.
When you look at,
gives us all the scoops.
Yeah. Like when you look at, and so what I want to know is, and I guess with the, like ESPN has kind of been shifting to this versatility thing with their on-air time. Like you see Swagoo, obviously he makes most of his time on NFL Live, but you see him on Get Up from time to time. You see him on SportsCenter from time to time. You see him on First Take from time to time, right? Same thing with Perk, and like he's usually on NBA Today, but he'll like so.
They got multiple gigs.
Yeah, but like guys like McShay and Pollock, for me personally, as someone that just enjoys the news of things, like without the theatrics,
yeah,
that a lot of the on-air talent brings. Like let's just talk X's and O's on the field, off the field, no theatrics. Those two for me, hurt me the most.
Because it feels like they were so well respected, right?
Yeah.
Especially Pollock. People had their shit about McShay and Max Kellerman and especially Jeff Van Gundy, but like when you look at Pollock's resume, you're just like, Jesus Christ.
I don't know if he has a blemish on his resume.
Right.
Like that's how good of a guy. I that one when I read the name, that one shocked me the most for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes down to a couple for me, as much as I hate to be that way, because, the first one I heard of was Max, and I just recently fell in love with KJM. I love that morning drive. Sure. I'm really there for Jay Williams. Luckily, he kept his job. Keyshawn Johnson has some good feedback. Max has good takes as well. I know he's been in the game for a while. He's had his bad, Iguodala and Tom Brady's falling off the cliff and all this. But overall, Max goes back literally 25 years. And whether it's from, Max on Boxing or Friday Night Fights way, way back in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, to First Take to this Justin, Max Kellerman was definitely a shock. But I've heard of Max Kellerman's job potentially being in jeopardy a couple times over the last few months and few years just because of, I feel like in a way he kind of blends in with Skip Bayless in a way. He's just not heartless. You know what I mean? Like Skip had those comments about Damar Hamlin and has trashed Shannon Sharp a couple times on Skip and Shannon, and RIP that show. I really hope Shannon, comes through with an opening, and that's kind of another point here we'll get to. But Max Kellerman, definitely shocking. I also got to say Neil Everett, man. 23 years on SportsCenter, all of his catchphrases, just all the people he had the opportunity of bringing onto that program, just anchoring it for so long. Jalen Rose as well. Let me talk about how they did Jalen Rose so dirty. Rose, first of all, 16 years into business. Jalen Rose, obviously, he's on the NBA broadcast crew next to the legendary Mike Breen, next to Mark Jackson as well. Or no, excuse me, that's Jeff Van Gundy, wrong person. But we know what Jalen Rose has done, with ESPN and with the NBA. He was supposed to be on Get Up the morning of his layoff. They even teased Jalen Rose coming onto the show, and ESPN cut his appearance, claimed it was audio issues, and then just a couple hours later laid him off. Did Jalen Rose absolutely filthy? And then I think the final one really for me is Susie Colbert. I mean, what complaints do we really have about Susie Colbert? one of the most iconic women to ever broadcast for sports. I mean, making the way for the, I don't know how far back these people might go, but the Sage Steeles and the Ashley Brewers and the Malika Andrews. I mean, all of those reputable females that, the Joy Taylors of the world. Like, let's not forget about these folks, the Ashley Nicole Moss on I Am Athlete. And that's a little more, outside the lines because they're on YouTube, but just the overall confidence for a woman to step into such a male dominated industry, whether it's sports, whether it's broadcasting, whether it's doing the on-field reporting. 27 years with the company, just absolutely gone. It's mind blowing. So I'd have to say the most shocking one's probably Max. No, I'm not really shocked about Max as much as I hate to say that. I'd go Susie Colbert. God, Jalen Rose, Neil Everett. I mean, definitely Todd McShay. I'm shocked about a few of them for sure. And I mean, let's think about it. If guys like Max, Susie, Todd, Jalen, and Neil are losing their jobs, Stephen A. Smith even said it on his own show. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I could be next. He said, that is an actual possibility. He said, and I've busted my tail for this. As a black man in broadcasting on national television, I take nothing for granted. And I don't think he was trying to play that race card there. He's just being realistic. Kind of that, segment or that statement I just made there about Susie Colbert, like not only because she's a woman, but what she did in her tenure. And just so because she happens to be a woman, I really feel like she made that way for a lot of people. So now we know, all these layoffs have happened. There's more coming. And apparently the worst is yet to come, right?
Yep.
Well, earlier in the year, we know that Pat McAfee breaks out of his deal with FanDuel. Reportedly, it's a 5-year, $85 million deal with ESPN. So I think he takes a little bit of a discount, but I believe he's also looking bigger. Shannon Sharp just gets off of Skip and Shannon Undisputed. Apparently, he said that, he's going to be back on morning television soon. We talked about ESPN's era kind of changing. And, before I ask the question, I feel like when you look at some of these people, like I said it, right? They cut an average of 20 years of experience when you add all these years up and divide them by just the people that I, laid out here. A lot of these were, in terms of the broadcasting game, old heads. Like, I'm not even being rude, but these people were literally in 25 years, 27 years, 16 years, 17 years, 16 years, 23 years with Steve Young, like a legend. Yeah, people are just absolutely done away with. So it's like they're shifting eras. They're shifting their identity. They're bringing in an edgy Pat McAfee. They're bringing in TV's favorite uncle and Shannon Sharp, possibly. Apparently Shannon's been in talks with FanDuel. But do you think that's possibly the cause? I mean, of course, they wanted to reduce costs. Like Disney said, these layoffs were coming. ESPN knew it was involved. With Pat McAfee coming in, with, a lot of older talent being fired because of how long they've been in. I mean, do you think a cause of it could be Pat McAfee? Is this maybe making an opening for Shannon Sharp? How do you necessarily feel about that?
No, I think Pat McAfee is an example of the overarching thing, which is that the attention span of the average human being has gone down tremendously over the past couple of years.
Oh yeah.
When you look at the rise of things like TikTok, you look at the rise,
short form video did
not really the rise of Twitter, because Twitter's always been popular, but like when you think about, especially in the sports context of things, the rise of Twitter, when you look at things like this, podcasts and podcast-like formats, like the informality of this, as lovely as this show is, as lovely as my show is, as lovely as the shows on Give Us a Shot Network, and just to plug some people that I know, just for example, like as lovely as Justin's show is with hashtag this Justin, and as great as like my guy Jalen Hunter with Young Popular Podcast, as great as Road Talk with MJ is, as great as Steezy A. Smith is, as great as all these pods are, as great as the back pocket pod is, who just rebranded a couple days ago. Like, we are not the stereotypical sports delivery, right? We're not up here in suits and ties, reading teleprompters, yelling at each other for 2 minutes at a time and 5 to 10 minute segments about the biggest news. Like it's very laid back, and it's so much more personable this way, right? We deliver this thing we love. We deliver sports news. We deliver sports content in a much more relatable, much more down to earth way for the average viewer or for the average listener than ESPN does and has done. Do you know what I mean? So when you're talking about bringing in a guy like Pat McAfee, major props to Pat McAfee and what he's been able to do post NFL and how he's been able to revitalize himself and make a career out of this. And what he does is amazing. But what Pat McAfee represents, what Shannon Sharp represents with Club Shay Shay, like, let's think about this for a second. Can we talk about the number of people now more than ever that get off of their morning shows on TV, whether it's Fox Sports, ESPN, whatever,
Yes.
and go do a radio show or like you've got Ryan Clark and Daniel Cormier. They've got a show. You obviously talked about Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max, which is formerly Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, right? Stephen A. has his own podcast. The Skip Bayless has a podcast. Shannon Sharp obviously started his own podcast. Like, basketball players.
Colin Cowherd started a whole podcast network and works for FS1.
Like Volume Sport, like
very remarkable.
Basketball players now have their own, like this, like the podcast space, the ability to deliver sports in an informal, laid back, relatable way for the fan to feel so much more connected to players and so much more connected to the on-air personality makes it so much so that as wonderful as the Susie Colberts and the Jalen Roses and the David Pollacks and the Todd McShays of the world are, that form of delivery just isn't it anymore.
Right.
It's just not.
You're exactly
the suit and tie
picking up what I'm putting
isn't
down.
It. Yep. We're talking about being able to take something just like this and reproduce it on other platforms for the average listener or the average viewer to watch or listen to on the ride to work, on the way home from work, during dinner, like on their Saturdays. And so now what you're able to do is, as a listener, as a viewer, you're able to digest more information because it's not thrown at you in so much information, such a short amount of time. The one show that I love, and the one show that I've always loved, that has never changed as far as I've been watching it, is Pardon the Interruption.
Oh, bro, they kill it.
Because despite the suit and tie feel, it's still very informal in the way that it's produced.
Yep.
And so again, like Pat McAfee, I think, is being the villain because it's his move that has sparked all these things.
Right.
But let's be honest, this was going to happen eventually.
Right.
Because we're just in a new era.
You're right.
Like, we're just in a new era of viewership. We're in a new era of content creation. We're in a new era of content consumption. Yep. And this is just the way that people consume
the big
content.
Thing. We're in a new era of content consumption. That's the biggest part. No, I'm there with you, man. ESPN's era is definitely changing. It's definitely going to be something that's kind of being ushered out and new things coming in. I mean, like we said, with a lot of this, very experienced, very, very veteran leadership and just aspects to ESPN, all the reporters that got laid off. I mean, it's just wild to know that guys that pulled that much weight, did multiple shows, were at multiple events, just traveling around the world, pulling the hours that they did for ESPN. It's wild, but you do have to pivot. You do have to adjust because you don't want it to be like, other businesses and just, other stores and companies out there to where because they don't pivot, they either get bought out or they go out of business. And ESPN is in no way, shape, or form to do any of those things. That's literally why they just bring Pat McAfee in. And I hope it's, as much as I hate to see these guys go because it's not going to be the same. Like the NBA is not going to be the same without Van Gundy next to Mike Breen and Mark Jackson or Mark Jackson or, Todd McShay being on, the NFL draft countdown and, doing his mock drafts and Jalen Rose and Neil Everett hosting Sports Center. Like, yes, that's not going to be the same at all, but it makes you hopeful because you have a guy like Pat McAfee coming in, because you do feel this new era just happening for ESPN. You want to have faith for it because as much as, certain people might not like ESPN, they do still have their fair share of programs and shows. And at the end of the day, coverage of sports that people are always going to come back to, so definitely an interesting way for things to play out there. Y'all get in the comments. It's actually the first time saying that on the show. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about the big time layoffs that were served at ESPN. We went over the Super Bowl windows, of course, here on the show. And now we're getting into the lovely Sean Payton that I mentioned earlier as we were getting into episode 29. Sean Payton said he is addicted to winning another Super Bowl in Denver with the Broncos. And just for a little perspective here on kind of Sean Payton's exit from coaching and then coming back in, with me being a diehard Houdat and all. So he said his heart wasn't in it anymore when he left New Orleans. And I totally understand the no call was gut wrenching. The Minneapolis Miracle was gut wrenching. What should have felt like offensive pass interference on, I want to say, is that Kyle Rudolph? Yeah, on Kyle Rudolph in the year after the no call. Drew Brees' last year throwing the interceptions against the Bucs. Like, that was a lot for them, knowing that the defense wasn't around as much, and then it does come around, but then it's like, oh, now the coaching and the offense can't necessarily click enough in the big moments to actually make it happen. So he takes a year off, and he comes back as a new head coach with a quarterback coming off the worst season of his career, and he says he's addicted again, or he's addicted to winning a second Super Bowl. So it just doesn't add up with what he said literally a year ago, leaving coaching and then coming back. But a lot of people knew he wanted the Broncos job. There was talks about the Cowboys job. There was talks about the Chargers job. But he's with the Denver Broncos, and he's only one of 9 active head coaches with the Super Bowl win. So will Sean Payton win his second Super Bowl in Denver, Marcus?
No. I don't have a soliloquy for you. I don't. I wish I did. I wish I can give you some groundbreaking analysis.
Yeah.
The kings of the NFL reside in the AFC West, and as long as you have to go through the Kansas City Chiefs to win a Super Bowl, probably not happening. So no. But hey, Sean, love that for you. I'm sure Denver Broncos fans ate it up. Oh my God, Sean's addicted to winning another one. We're gonna get it. Sorry, buddy. It's been 10 years since you had one in Denver. It's been what, 14 years since Sean Payton won one?
Yep.
Let's look to make it 11 and 15. See you next year. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry.
Yeah. It's an interesting layout for Sean Payton when you look at if he actually has the capability to win his second Super Bowl in Denver. I will say this. It will only happen with Russell Wilson. It will not happen with any other quarterback. And some people sitting out there believe that it won't even happen with Russell Wilson. But unless the Broncos are just absolutely horrible over the next year or two, which they have an exit strategy for Russ, they've already come out and said, hey, we're looking at ways to get out of this dog shit contract because of how he played last year. If Sean Payton can't make at least a run or make some sort of thing happen with Russell Wilson under center at his quarterback, I don't know who's going to be able to come out, who else will be able to come in rightfully with the mindset and just kind of the aggressiveness and grittiness of Sean Payton. Like, will he really be able to mold a quarterback like that? Because he came in and yes, Drew Brees was in the league at least for a few years. Yes, coming off of an injury, but Drew Brees quickly turned into the Drew Brees that he was. And he didn't necessarily have to deal with the Jameis Winston because he did get hurt, but was 5-2 under Sean Payton's guidance. So I feel like if Sean Payton can get Jameis Winston to a 5-2 start, and yes, we don't know what would have happened for the rest of the year, but through those 7 games, Jameis Winston was playing decent in his career, or decent, in a New Orleans Saints uniform. But he's got to do it with Russell Wilson. We know that he has the defensive roster. The defense is elite enough to do so. We know he has the roster around him on both sides of the football. But my drawback with Sean Payton is, and I witnessed it firsthand being a New Orleans Saints fan, he has his moments in games sometimes. And I'll take you guys back to the no call of the NFC Championship game. It was about 1 minute and 20 seconds left in the game. And instead of running the ball to keep the clock going, Michael Thomas, it was a great year. I think this is the year with the record catches, or maybe it was the year before that. I'm not sure. We snapped the ball immediately. Drew Brees comes up and throws a pass to Michael Thomas. It's low to the ground. It hits the ground, and it stops the clock in the NFC title game. I don't know if it was the same season. I want to say it was the year after when they had the shootout against the 49ers at home. Jared Cook goes crazy, catching those first 2 touchdown passes, gets knocked out with a concussion. Maybe it was Dennis Allen. A lot of people went after Dennis Allen's head. You put a rookie, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who had a great rookie year, and clearly he's jumped around to some teams, but he's still a top safety in the league. You put a rookie, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, on the best tight end in the league at the time in George Kittle, and maybe the best team in the league at the time in the San Francisco 49ers. Now, whether it's the regular season or the postseason, he's just had these moments in games where he outthinks the room. And I'll even go on for a take here for you guys, because unfortunately, the more that I saw Sean Payton make those types of decisions, in certain points of the game, just hear me out for a second. Sean Payton opened up his one and only Super Bowl second half kickoff appearance with an onside kick, which doinked off of a Colts player's helmet. Can you imagine the conversation that would be around Sean Payton if he wouldn't have pulled that off and they would have lost the one and only Super Bowl for the New Orleans Saints? And I understand if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. I totally get that, right? But when you look at how he's had similar questionable decisions or choices not go his way, it makes you think back and wonder, is he really, that I mean, yes, he really is that elite of a coaching mind, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The Saints offense was dynamic really the entire time that Sean was there. I don't think it was ever under a top 10, yards per game or points per game team. But when you talk about what the Broncos are now, when you talk about Russell Wilson coming off the worst season of his career, when you talk about the overall situation in Denver and what he's walking into, and then you combine that with how he can possibly outthink the room, that's what makes me wary. So the only way he'll win his second Super Bowl in Denver is if it's with Russell Wilson, which who knows how many years Sean's going to be there, who knows how many years Russ is going to be there. If he wants to stick it out in Denver, we can't foresee that. But the second win will have to be with Russell Wilson. And I'll go on the record and say, of course, I'm hoping Sean Payton wins a second Super Bowl. I watched that man turn around my favorite sports team in history and bring us to the promised land. We used to wear bags on our fucking heads, and we actually got a Super Bowl ring. So, of course, I'm hoping for Sean Payton to actually take the Denver Broncos to the promised land. Does part of me not want him to? Of course, because he takes one season off, goes on, broadcasting or whatever, and then now he's coaching Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos.
Sure.
But let's get into the last segment here of the show. Top 10 NFL quarterbacks going into the 2023 season. You want to go 1 to 10 or 10 to 1?
Let's go 10-1. I mean, we all know who 1 is. So there's no
right. All right.
We all know who 1 and 2 is, I would think. So there's
right.
no real anticipation there. But yeah,
of course.
We can go 10-3.
So there we go. We'll start at 10. You'll give your 10. I'll do mine. And then at the very end, we'll just list it all off in order so the people know. Need to make sure I'm definitely changing my graphics. So we're on point here on episode 29 of the NFL with AJL. Give me your 10th overall quarterback going into the 2023 season.
There's so many people that can go into this spot. For me, I think Kirk Cousins could go in this spot. I personally think Derek Carr could go in this spot. And I think you could make a strong argument for say a healthy Matthew Stafford, or even someone like a Jared Goff could go in this spot. I'm going to give my 10th spot to Deshaun Watson.
That's so fair.
I think a healthy Deshaun Watson, again, like I said earlier, 75 to 80% of what we saw before the nonsense. That Deshaun Watson, 75%, 80% of that Deshaun is still a top 10 quarterback in football.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at what he brings to the table, and I think at what you look at his age, and when you look at how prolific he is as a passer, when you look at the accuracy, when you look at the physical attributes of being able to run with the ball and the arm strength and all the things that we loved about Deshaun Watson before the nonsense, I think that gives Deshaun Watson comfortably the right to be number 10 over a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr or a Matt Stafford or a Jared Goff. So I'll put Deshaun Watson at 10.
Deshaun Watson at number 10. I'm going to go Kirk Cousins at the 10th spot. Like you mentioned, he could have went here, and there was a couple people that could have went there, whether it was Kirk, whether it was Dak. You said Derek Carr. If for some reason Russell Wilson tried to return to form, you could even plug in a Geno Smith there if you'd like. But I'm going to go Kirk Cousins because when you talk about this 10th, hovering around the 10th to, maybe 12th best quarterback in the league, when you look at Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, I kind of don't even want to include Russ just for this comparison. You think about guys that are good enough to win you a football game, but it's kind of the Matt Ryan effect. It's all got to be perfect. Well, let me give a little more credit to Matt Ryan because he overcame a lot of dysfunction to make a hell of a career in Atlanta. I feel like more times than not in terms of how their season went with coaching and everything. But you just look at a group of quarterbacks or, kind of like that logjam you're talking about in the AFC. You're in a spot to where you could really claim that 10th, which I'm going to give to Kirk, but you could also be to where you play as the 11th or 12th or 13th best quarterback in the league. I know he plays a lot of close games. I know he's not good in prime time. I trust him over Dak in a big game. I clearly trust him over Geno Smith in a big game, and especially with how Derek Carr has been playing lately as well. Not necessarily like, well, I don't know. I guess I could call him Mr. Consistency. I mean, Kirk Cousins just continues to earn his money and keep that starting job in Minnesota, and we don't hear of any real rumblings that Kirk is going to lose his job. So I'm going to go Kirk there at number 10. Number 9.
Now, this is where things get controversial. But I mean, I don't really care. I really don't care. Number 9 for me is Lamar. I understand that Lamar Jackson is a former MVP, but this is a what have you done for me lately league.
Oh, yeah.
Lamar Jackson the last 2 seasons yet to play a full season.
Yep.
Health issues.
Yep.
And while I understand what Lamar brings to the table, I cannot, in good conscience, put Lamar Jackson over anywhere higher than 9. And I'll be honest. Here's the thing. If Deshaun Watson didn't miss a year and a half because of his own foolishness or unwillingness to play for the Texans, if Deshaun Watson was still Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson would probably be 10 because Deshaun would be higher on the list. So
better throw the football.
Lamar's 9.
Yeah.
I'll just put it at that. And it's controversial because of who I have directly ahead of him. But Lamar Jackson is 9 to me.
It's not controversial, brother. And I've ironically got Lamar Jackson at my number 9 spot as well. I know he's electric. I know he makes defenses think twice. I know what he can do with his legs. But it's also, what have you done for me lately, league? You look at how he hasn't been healthy the last 2 years. You look at how he's never even thrown for 4,000 yards in a season, not even the MVP year. And the more I see Lamar after this MVP season, like, okay, Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing at a high level that year. There was, I can't remember exactly who all it was, but there was the quarterback landscape was a little different that year. And I feel like Lamar, not to take anything away from him, I just feel like he kind of improperly got elevated to the height of MVP due to some of the absences in the quarterback landscape that we saw in that year. And
I 100% agree.
One of those examples I just kind of think off the top of my head is, with Aaron
Rodgers.
Look
at Drew Brees. Drew Brees the year before was second in MVP. The year after that, he was not at all in that category. You talk about Aaron Rodgers having You talk about Aaron Rodgers having a down year. It was because we had a new coach, and so there was a couple of issues there, right? Yep. You look at a guy. Who else was in the conversation like a couple years before? You look at a guy, like a Tom Brady, who was kind of in the conversation in years prior, but had just been slowly, just because of age, not really hitting that mark. And also, that was his last season. If I'm not mistaken, that was his last season in New England. It didn't go all that well for him in New England. So there were a lot. I agree. There were a lot of things that went Lamar Jackson's way.
Yep.
As it pertains to him being able to win that award, taking nothing away from him, but a lot of things did go his way. I agree.
I like how you mentioned Drew Brees as well, because I think I think a kind of vice versa way to put it is the reason Lamar Jackson won MVP that year is the reason Drew Brees never won MVP in his career. Drew Brees never won it because he competed with a Tom Brady and an Aaron Rodgers and a Peyton Manning time after time after time after time, but was consistently a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the league. He just always had the competition to where he was never the best. And please don't think, guys, that we're taking anything away from Lamar. It's just when you put it in a perspective of his health, how he's actually played, how the arm has yet to consistently come around, I think you can attribute that to some of the lesser talent at the time just in the quarterback landscape. But yes, Lamar Jackson at number 9. He can easily be propelled to a top 5 quarterback this year, but as we walk into 2023, I'm going to stick him at number 9. Number 8.
Dak Prescott's number 8 for me. I am one of very few people that are maybe the only person on the planet that is not a Cowboys fan that believes that Dak Prescott's top 10, let alone the 8th best quarterback in football. Even more specifically, better than a former MVP Lamar Jackson. And the reason why is, again, I think we give Dak Prescott way too much criticism because of the team he plays for. If if Dak Prescott was not a Dallas Cowboy, we would not, as a collective, as an NFL community, as a fan base, as members of the media, even if you want to consider myself and AJ and other guys that are podcasters, members of the media, we would not crap on Dak Prescott the way that we do if he was an Eagle, or if he was a Steeler, or if he was a member of the Atlanta Falcons, or the Carolina Panthers.
Maybe the Falcons.
Maybe the Falcons. But people give Dak Prescott all this crap and all this slack because he has a star on the side of his helmet, and because, like I said earlier, people are so conditioned to pull up the quarter of a century whenever they want to talk about Lamar Jackson whenever they want to talk about Dak Prescott, that they don't just take into account what's happening right now. Let me paint a picture for you. Josh Allen, who people love, who people think is primed to an MVP almost year in and year out at this point, he turned the ball over more than Dak Prescott did last season. I understand Dak Prescott missed 5 games. He still led the league in interception. Fine. Josh Allen had double the amount of turnovers, interceptions or fumbles in the red zone last season than anybody. He had 14. He was second in interceptions behind Dak Prescott last season. We do not give as much crap to Josh Allen as we do to Dak Prescott because Josh Allen is a Buffalo Bill. Mm-hmm. If Josh Allen was a Dallas Cowboy, 14 turnovers and leading the league, or 14 interceptions and leading the league in red zone turnovers would be inexcusable. Let's look at who Dak Prescott is as a quarterback. Let's look at what he brings to the table. Let's not forget the fact that over the past couple seasons, injury or not, he has been the quarterback of one of the more prolific offenses in the NFL from a points per game standpoint, from a passing yard per game standpoint, from a total yard per game standpoint, from a passer rating standpoint, from a completion percentage standpoint. Any metric you want to pull, Dak Prescott is somewhere in the top 10, top 15 because he's a good quarterback. Me personally, I think he's top. I think he's 8, and I put him ahead of Lamar Jackson because he's a better passer of the football than Lamar Jackson is. And despite how box office Lamar is, I do not think as a quarterback, Lamar's ability to run the football should trump Dak Prescott's ability to throw the football. So for me, Dak Prescott is 8.
I'm right there with you, man. 100%. Not with Dak Prescott being an 8, but what you said about, Lamar Jackson's legs shouldn't trump the fact that Dak can sling the rock. I'm going to put Trevor Lawrence at number 8. I think this is where he's going to come in next year. And we talked about the leap that he's going to make. We talked about Calvin Ridley coming back, what that offense actually has to provide, how the Super Bowl window is wide open, how if they did bring in DeAndre Hopkins, it would be one of those few AFC teams that does have that triple-headed monster to really compete with the Chase, Boyd, and Higgins and Associates trio they got over there in Cincinnati. Trevor Lawrence will be number 8. On to number 7.
I have Trevor Lawrence. I have Trevor Lawrence at 7. At the end of last season, I had him at like that 6. But I'm going to give Aaron Rodgers the same benefit of the doubt that we all gave Tom Brady with the change of scenery. I think we can see Aaron Rodgers kind of revitalize his career a bit. Mm-hmm. Not that it's dead, but we can see Aaron Rodgers kind of get back to being the happy-go-lucky guy that he was a couple years ago. Trevor Lawrence, though, I do think by season's end will be the 5th best quarterback in football. Right now, though, I'll put him at 7.
Trevor Lawrence at number 7 for GTP Marcus. This is where I'm going to put Deshaun Watson as the 7th best quarterback in the NFL going into 2023. You guys heard me mention it earlier. I believe he is the closest prototype to Patrick Mahomes when you talk about intelligence, the way he can make plays, the way he can sling the football, the way he can move outside of the pocket. And I know that might be crazy for a lot of people, and it's been a couple of seasons since we've seen that out of Deshaun Watson. But again, I'm not going to take him missing 11 games because we knew he was going to be rusty. I'm not going to take that 11 games that he missed and just immediately write him off. And I know some of you are going to counter and say, well, how can you use the same logic of, he missed a whole season and now he's going to be the 7th best quarterback coming back in? Yes, because he's had the entire offseason. I feel like most of the off-field stuff is off his back. So he actually has the mental capacity to be that starter as, that starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns with the big contract that he's got. And I believe this season he will play up to that level. Deshaun Watson at number 7, number 6.
I think Aaron Rodgers goes at number 6. He's not a top 5 quarterback anymore. But he is better than the 4 guys I mentioned ahead or previously. That's really the only way I can put it. He's still top 10. He's just not as good as the guys I have in my top 5, but he's definitely better than 7 through 10. And there's no real explanation I have. There's no justification other than this is the only place for him to go, really.
Right in the mighty middle. I got A-Rod at number 6 as well, because I will say right now he's just more of a veteran than Deshaun Watson. I feel like he's seen more. Trevor Lawrence is still going to have to take that leap to be on the pedestal of Aaron Rodgers. Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins we talked about. And then the people that are above him will get to that. He's not up to their level, but he can be because of how long he's been in the game, because he is a veteran, because he does have a great arm, because he is very intelligent. Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets' newest franchise quarterback, here at number 6 for me. Now we get into the top 5.
Oh, not my top 5, because like I said before, 1 and 2 are easy. It's open and shut for me. 3 to 5 is difficult for me because I am someone that needs if you're a top 5 quarterback, you need to give me 3 years in a row that proves 2 to 3 years, but really 3, at any position to prove that you belong in that conversation. It's the reason why I haven't anointed Cooper Kupp as the best receiver in football. It's the reason why I didn't anoint Jonathan Taylor as the best running back in football. It's the reason why I've never said that a Mark Andrews or a Darren Waller was the best tight end in football, because they didn't give me 3 years comparable or better than what a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle gave me. It's because Jonathan Taylor didn't give me 3 years comparable or better than what a Derrick Henry or a Christian McCaffrey gave me. It's because Cooper Kupp's one season didn't eclipse what Devontae Adams did for 3 seasons and things like that. So for that reason, because of how I judge, I'm going to put Jalen Hurts at 5. And I know that sounds crazy considering he was just an MVP candidate, considering he was just a runner-up for the Super Bowl, and considering, quite honestly, despite losing, he should have been Super Bowl MVP because he was just that good. Jalen Hurts, I'll put it this way. If you put any quarterback that is not in the top 3, so if you put, and I'll just say this, if you put a Justin Herbert in that situation, if you put a Trevor Lawrence in Philly, I think if you put Dak Prescott in Philly, I think if you put Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson in Philly, I think if you put Kirk Cousins in Philly, if you put any competent quarterback from 5 to 13 in Philly, nothing changes. The only thing that changes with some of these guys is how prolific Jalen Hurts is as a running quarterback. He's not better than Josh Allen to me. They do the exact same thing. Josh Allen is better than Jalen Hurts in my opinion. I have Jalen Hurts at 5, but I go back and forth because realistically he should be 4. I agree. If we're just basing it off of last season, he should be 4. And if you want to do that, we can do that. But I'm not like Jalen Hurts could take a step back and then he's not as good as he was last season. So I'm going to put him at 5 because I do think I think the 4 players that I have ahead of him deserve to be ahead of him, despite what people may say. So I have Jalen Hurts at 5.
Not mad about it, man, at all. I know exactly what you mean with, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts kind of doing the same thing. Josh Allen's a lot bigger, but we see Jalen Hurts get further. But some people would say, oh, look at the team that's around him. Look at the easy schedule, this, that, and the third. Number 5 for me is going to be Justin Herbert, though. Great young quarterback that we all know about in the NFL. I believe this is going to be a season where he still plays at that top 5 level, where he's going to have a Keenan Allen, where he's going to have a, who Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Who else did they draft? Oh,
they drafted Quentin Johnson. Yeah,
they drafted QJ. Wasn't a big fan of that because I feel like he's kind of the same as Mike Williams, but I understand they need some help as well. And there was literally no bigger receiver even that came close to it in the draft like QJ. But yes, Justin Herbert will be my number 5 quarterback for obvious reasons. Number 4.
My number 4 is Justin Herbert. Accolades aside, when you look strictly from a statistical standpoint, how many quarterbacks have had a greater start to the first 3 years of their career than Justin Herbert?
Yep.
We talked about it earlier. Justin Herbert had the greatest rookie season ever from a standpoint of passing yards, passing touchdowns, touchdown interception ratio. Like, he had one of the greatest, if not the greatest rookie season ever. He followed up with one of the greatest, if not the greatest, sophomore season ever. He followed up with one of the greatest, if not the greatest, junior season ever. When you compile his first 3 years in totality, passing touchdowns, touchdown interception ratio, completion percentage, total yards, it's all time what we've seen Justin Herbert do. The reason why we don't give Justin Herbert his respect is because his team is 19-20, because they struggle to win close games, because they struggle to stay healthy, because they still haven't solved the coaching, and because unfortunately for him, the best quarterback in football, and arguably potentially when it's all said and done, the best quarterback ever set foot on the face of the planet, also resides in his division. And unfortunately, Justin Herbert will always be Pat Mahomes' little brother. That's the reality of the situation, unfortunately.
Yep.
If you ignore the lack of accolades, Justin Herbert's the 4th best quarterback in football. He's got the arm. He has the mental. He has the talent. He has the ability. He's just missing the accolades. Like, he's missing the playoff wins and he's missing the hardware and all that stuff.
Right.
But so aside from that, if we're just looking at the ability to play the quarterback position, Justin Herbert's 4th for me.
Justin Herbert at number 4. Sounds like we're just kind of switching them off here. Jalen Hurts is going to be the number 4 quarterback for me. Can't deny the position when you look at what he did going to the Super Bowl. Some people might put him in at the 5, and I know you put him in at the 5 as well because we understand Justin Herbert has had a longer tenure of doing this greatly. But I'm also on that, mountain of I saw what Jalen Hurts was at Alabama and Oklahoma when the Eagles drafted him. I was like, why the hell did they take him? I was very curious. Carson Wentz was still on the payroll. I think it still had that big contract on his back. And then we see them pull Jalen Hurts out of a game at the end of the season where he is clearly pissed off about it, I want to say, when they were playing the Giants. Can't deny what he just did, though. It is going to look very different this year. And kind of thinking about it now, it almost makes me want to put Herbert over Jalen Hurts, but I'll keep Jalen Hurts comfortably there. I got to give him the respect coming off of the season that he had. Now, number 3.
Josh Allen. It's the only place that he can go. I think there were a lot of people that were campaigning for Josh Allen to be the second best quarterback in football.
Right.
Joe Burrow has quickly closed that door. Sorry, spoiler alert. Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in football. Josh Allen goes 3. It's the same reason for Josh Allen being at 3 as why I have Aaron Rodgers at 6. Josh Allen's not as good as Joe Burrow, and he's not as good as Pat Mahomes. He's better than everybody else we've mentioned before. This is the only place for him to go because he's absolutely top 5. Justin Herbert's not better than him, and Jalen Hurts isn't better than him yet.
Right.
He can be, but not yet.
Right.
So this is the only place for him to go. Josh Allen goes here. He's 3.
I almost wanted to put Jalen Hurts here originally, but I just can't deny the talent, the size, what Josh Allen actually does. And if I really had to choose a couple quarterbacks, I feel like anyways, to start my franchise with, I would take I almost said Jalen Herbert. That's crazy. Josh Allen. I would take Josh Allen over Justin Hurts. Josh Allen is going to be the number 3 quarterback for me as well for very obvious reasons. Big build, big arm. Great talent in the league. We understand he has the mental capacity. The turnovers might not be the greatest thing for us to look at, but I don't think we can deny the talent of Josh Allen. Joe Burrow, number 2, same for you as well. Patrick Mahomes, number 1, same for you as well, like we mentioned.
Easy.
It's been a hell of a show, ladies and gentlemen. I was gone for a few weeks, like I said, episode 29. We came back, chopped it all up, had GTP Marcus as the guest on the show tonight. I'm going to hit this intro music, man, or outro music, I guess, and we'll get out of here. That was episode 29 of the NFL with AJL, ladies and gentlemen. We chopped it up about ESPN's layoffs, the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, Super Bowl windows for the selected teams, and Sean Payton being addicted to winning his second Super Bowl in the NFL with the Denver Broncos. Appreciate everybody that jumped in tonight. Please make sure to like and share the stream over by Marcus. Scan that. It'll give you every bit of content at the NFL with AJL on all platforms. Get at us on social. Get at us on podcast platforms. Before we get out of here, plug yourself, man.
First of all, I want to deeply apologize for dragging you into the deep waters. I'm sure 2 hours and 16 minutes is not on the bingo card tonight. I apologize. I'm working on not being so long-winded. I am proud to say every time I wrap a show, whether it's my show or as a guest appearance, that Go Talk with Marcus is a member of the mighty Gives a Shot Network, home of Stuff About Sports with Payton Germ, home of the High Spot podcast, home of JT and the Don and JT and Don All Sport podcast, and of course, home of the Divide Live with Mike and Corey. So if you want to find me, head over to YouTube, head over to Facebook, and search up the Give Us a Shot Network and subscribe. I'm doing double duty this week, although I guess it's triple duty. I just did a show tonight. I've got a show tomorrow night at 7:30 talking all things NBA, and I've got a show Friday night at 6:30 talking all things WNBA. Yes, there are people out there that enjoy the WNBA, and I'm one of them. As I say on my show, if you don't like the WNBA, you're not a real basketball fan, and that's perfectly fine. It's always a pleasure to chop it up with my guy, Adam. One day soon, when the NFL season approaches, Adam will be on with Go Talk with Marcus. It's been a minute since we've had Adam on the show, so I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, man, it is absolutely no worries at all. You know, I appreciate you hopping on the show tonight. Can't wait to be on Goat Talk with Marcus, at GTP Marcus on all social platforms, y'all, at the NFL with AJL on all social media platforms. This has been episode 29.